Across most of human history, sleep was not built around softness. The head did not sink into a pillow made for comfort. It rested on folded arms, animal skins, dry grass, packed earth, or the uneven edge of a place that felt safe enough for one night. Today, a pillow feels like something the body needs. But for most humans before us, it was not there at all. What changed in the long story of sleep? Why 90% of human history had no pillow? Before sleep became a room, before it became a bed, before it became a soft object placed under the head, it was only a pause inside the older pressure of staying alive. A human body grew tired. The fire settled lower. The air cooled. The ground held the memory of the day's heat for a while, then slowly gave it away. Around the sleeping place there might have been voices, insects, wind, the shifting of animals, the smell of smoke, or the quiet weight of darkness beyond the reach of light. Nothing about this older sleep was arranged around comfort in the modern sense. There was no pillow waiting in the same clean place each night, no familiar height chosen for the neck, no private surface shaped around one person's habits. There was only a body that had moved, carried, gathered, watched, feared, adapted, and finally found a place where stopping seemed possible. The head, which now feels almost incomplete without a pillow, once belonged to a body that could not assume softness would be there. This is where the story must begin. Not with the invention of the pillow, but with the absence of a stable, sleeping world. For most of human existence, sleep was not a separate space. It was not surrounded by walls built mainly for privacy. It was not protected by locks, curtains, clean floors, and stored bedding. It happened wherever human life had paused long enough. Near a fire, inside a shelter, beneath trees, in the mouth of a cave, beside other bodies, or on ground that was simply less wet, less exposed, or less dangerous than somewhere else. The first question was not whether the head felt perfectly supported. The first question was whether the place allowed the body to lower its guard. That older condition changes the meaning of a pillow. A pillow is not only softness. It is a sign that sleep has become organized. It suggests repetition, storage, personal space, and the expectation that the same object will be useful again tomorrow. Early human life, especially among mobile groups, did not always favor such objects. What mattered was what could be carried, repaired, reused, or found again in the landscape. A sleeping support had to compete with tools, food, skins, containers, fire materials, and everything else needed for survival. In that world, the head might rest on an arm, a folded hide, a bundle of dry plants, a raised patch of earth, a smooth stone, a piece of wood, or simply the slope of the ground. These choices were not primitive versions of a modern pillow in a clean line of progress. They were temporary answers to temporary conditions. One night the ground might be soft enough. Another night the cold might push the body closer to others. Another night the neck might accept an uncomfortable angle because safety mattered more than ease. This does not mean ancient people did not care about comfort. That would be unfair and too simple. Humans have always adjusted the world around the body when they could. Archaeological evidence shows that people in deep time sometimes prepared sleeping areas with plant material, ash layers, hides, or other surfaces that could reduce cold, dampness, insects, or hardness. But the most ordinary acts of sleep often leave almost no trace. A folded arm disappears with the person who used it. Grass decays. A skin is moved, cut, traded, worn, or reused. A small support under the head may never survive long enough to become evidence. So the history of the pillow cannot be told as a neat story of one object suddenly appearing. It is better understood as a slow change in the relationship between the body and the ground. For a very long time, the sleeping body remained close to the surface of the earth. The head was not yet lifted into a private zone of softness. It was part of a whole body negotiating temperature, danger, fatigue, and belonging. Today, many people notice a pillow only when it fails them, when it is too high, too low, too hard, too warm, or missing. That small discomfort reveals how deeply modern sleep has been shaped by expectation. We no longer experience the pillow as an invention. We experience it as if it were part of the body's natural night. But the longer human story suggests something quieter and stranger. Sleep is ancient, but the shaped comfort around sleep is recent. Fatigue is ancient, but the personal object that receives the head is late, and before the pillow became ordinary, the human head rested inside a rougher agreement with the world. Here is the ground, here is the darkness, here is the body, and for this one night, this must be enough. To understand a world without pillows, it is necessary to stay with the simplest fact of ancient sleep. The head did not have a special place of its own. In the modern bedroom, the body is divided into zones before sleep even begins. The mattress receives the back, the blanket covers the skin, and the pillow receives the head. Each object has a role. Each surface is expected to be waiting, but for much of the human past, the sleeping body was not separated so neatly. The head was only one weight among many weights resting near the earth. The shoulder pressed down, the hip found the harder surface first. The ribs rose and fell against cold air. The skull, heavy and delicate at the same time, settled wherever the body could place it without losing too much safety, warmth, or readiness. That may be difficult to imagine now because the pillows quietly taught the modern body to expect a certain angle. It has taught the neck that rest should come with support. It has taught the face that sleep belongs above the surface, not directly against it. But long before that expectation became ordinary, the first human problem was not how to perfect sleep, it was how to make sleep possible at all. This older form of rest belonged to a life in which the environment did not step away when night came. The ground remained present, smoke remained present, dampness remained present, other bodies remained present. The sound of the night remained present. A sleeping place might be chosen near a fire, not because it was comfortable in the way a bedroom is comfortable, but because fire could push away some insects, some cold, and some animals. A place might be chosen near a wall of stone, not because stone was soft, but because it protected one side of the body. A person might sleep close to others, not only for warmth, but because shared alertness made sleep less dangerous. In such a setting, the head was not treated as a private object needing personal luxury. It was part of a whole body folded into a group, a shelter, and a landscape. The absence of a pillow shows how different that arrangement was. A pillow creates distance between the head and the world. It raises the face away from dust, dampness, insects, and uneven ground. It allows the sleeper to repeat a familiar posture night after night. Without it, sleep is more directly shaped by what is available. A slight slope in the earth may become support. A curled arm may lift the head for a while, then grow numb. A skin placed under the shoulder may change the angle of the neck, but only as part of a larger attempt to stay warm. A small bundle of grass may soften one pressure point while leaving another exposed. None of these things form a stable promise. They are not a permanent answer. They are negotiations. This matters because the title's question is not really about one missing object. It is about a missing system of sleep. For most of human history, people did not live inside a world where comfort could be stored in clean layers and returned to every evening. Many groups moved with seasons, animals, water, food, and weather. Even more settled communities still faced dirt floors, limited textiles, smoke-filled interiors, crowding, parasites, and the constant work of keeping materials usable. A pillow, especially a soft one, depends on surplus. Extra fiber, extra cloth, extra cleaning, extra storage, extra stability. Where those conditions were absent or limited, the body found smaller answers. It rested the head where it could. It accepted imperfection as part of night. This does not make ancient sleep inferior in a simple way. It only makes it different. The human body can sleep under many conditions, but the meaning of sleep changes when the environment is never fully excluded. A modern person may think of sleep as withdrawal from the world. Earlier sleep was often more like remaining within the world, but lowering the body into it. The head was close to the same earth that held footprints, ashes, tools, seeds, bones, and traces of daily work. It did not yet belong to a soft personal island. It belonged to a shared surface, under a sky or roof that did not completely remove the night. And from that older surface, the long history of the pillow begins as a slow movement away from direct contact, not all at once, and not everywhere, but gradually, as human life found ways to make the place of sleep more repeatable. The strange thing about the pillow is that it feels small. but it belongs to a very large change in human life. It is not only a soft object under the head, it is evidence that sleep has been given a shape. A pillow assumes that the sleeper will return to a similar place, lie in a similar posture, and expect the head to meet something prepared in advance. That assumption is so ordinary now that it almost disappears, but when we look back across the deeper human story, that assumption becomes unusual. For a long time, sleep had no permanent architecture around it. The body did not enter a bedroom in the modern sense. It did not withdraw into a clean, private space designed mainly for rest. It stopped inside the same world where it had walked, carried, searched, watched, cooked, and listened. The sleeping place was part of the living place. The head rested within that older arrangement, not above it. This is why the absence of a pillow matters. It shows that early sleep was not organized around the comfort of one body alone. It was organized around the conditions that made unconsciousness possible. If the ground was cold, the whole body had to respond. If the night was unsafe, the group had to respond. If the surface was uneven, the body adjusted. If there was smoke, dampness, insects, or crowding, sleep took shape around those facts. A pillow separates one part of the body from these pressures. It says that the head deserves its own prepared support. But before that idea became normal, the head was simply included in the body's larger negotiation with the earth. It might turn toward warmth. It might press against an arm. It might lean against a rolled skin. It might lower onto a patch of dry plant matter. It might stay slightly raised because the ground itself was sloped. These were not fixed habits preserved in perfect evidence. They were practical moments, repeated in countless ways and then lost. The deeper we go into human time, the more fragile the traces become. Stone tools can remain, bones can remain, hearths can remain, charcoal can remain, but a head position during sleep is rarely preserved. A soft support decays, a mat rots, a hide moves from one use to another. A body's temporary arrangement leaves only the faintest shadow, if it leaves anything at all. This is why we must be careful. We cannot say that no ancient person ever raised the head. We cannot say that every group slept in the same way. Human beings lived in many climates, on many terrains, with many materials and across immense spans of time. The safer point is more modest and more useful. The specialized, personal, soft pillow was not the foundation of human sleep. It came later, after many older ways of resting had already carried human bodies through night after night. That modest point still changes the way the modern pillow feels. It becomes less like a natural part of sleep and more like a late answer to an ancient vulnerability. The vulnerability is simple. A human being must become unconscious in a world that does not pause. The head, with its eyes, ears, mouth and brain, must be lowered. The neck must release some tension. The senses must reduce their watchfulness. Yet, the world continues. Wind moves. Animals move. Other people move. Temperature falls. The body cannot solve all of this with softness. It solves it first with place, group, fire, shelter, habit, and repeated judgment. Only much later does the pillow become one of the objects that makes sleep feel contained. In this first part of the story, the pillow is still absent because the world of sleep is still unfinished. It has not yet narrowed into furniture. It has not yet become a private, nightly arrangement. It is still broad, exposed, shared, and close to the ground. And perhaps this is the quietest historical mystery inside the title. Not that humans lacked one object, but that they lived for so long with sleep itself remaining open to the land around them. Before the pillow, there was not emptiness. There was earth, fire, skin, breath, darkness, and a human body learning, again and again, how little it truly needed before it could let go. The first support for the human head was not an invented object. It was the ground, in all its unevenness, coldness, firmness, and quiet authority. Before a pillow could become normal, before bedding could be stored and returned to every night, the earth was the surface that received the tired body. This sounds simple, but it changes the whole meaning of sleep. The ground is not neutral. It has temperature. It has texture. It holds moisture after rain and dust after drought. It can be stone, packed soil, sand, leaves, ash, grass, clay, roots, or a floor made hard by many feet. When a human body lies down on it, the ground does not reshape itself around the sleeper. The sleeper must arrange the body around the ground. That arrangement is where the older story of the missing pillow becomes physical. A modern pillow lifts the head away from the surface and gives the neck a prepared angle. The ground offers no such promise. It may raise one side of the skull slightly because of a root. It may press into the shoulder before the head has fully settled. It may allow the body to lie on the back but make the side position uncomfortable. It may be warm near the fire and cold only a short distance away. In such a world, the head did not rest in comfort as a separate need. It rested as part of the whole body's attempt to make contact with a difficult surface without losing too much warmth, safety, or readiness. This was not a minor detail. Human sleep begins at the moment when the body gives weight to the world. The legs stop carrying. The spine stops holding upright balance. The head, which has spent the day turning, scanning, listening, and responding, finally lowers. On a modern bed, that lowering is softened and controlled. On the ground, it was more direct. The skull might meet a folded arm because the earth was too hard. The neck might tilt because the shoulder created its own height. The jaw might turn away from dust or smoke. The face might avoid damp soil. The body might curl, not because it was seeking perfect posture, but because curling preserved warmth and made the outline of the body smaller. Every small position was shaped by the surface below. This is why the ground should be understood as the first sleep technology, even before it was changed by human hands. People did not invent it, but they learned to read it. A dry patch mattered. A slight rise mattered. A place behind a rock mattered. A layer of leaves mattered. A surface near embers mattered. The first improvement to sleep may not have been a pillow under the head, but a better choice of ground under the whole body. Over long periods, humans likely became skilled at noticing where rest could happen with less discomfort and less danger. But these choices were local and temporary. They were not the same as owning a personal object. They belonged to a night, a season, a place, and a group moving through its conditions. The ground also connected sleep to memory in a way the modern bedroom often hides. A sleeping place could sit near the marks of the day, cut plants, broken shells, ash, animal bones, stone flakes, footprints, and the faint paths made by repeated movement. The head rested close to the same surface where work had happened. There was no full separation between labour and rest, between outside and inside, between the body's waking struggle and its night recovery. Even when shelters appeared, even when people used branches, grasses, hides, or prepared floors, the ground remained the base. It was still the thing underneath everything else. That long closeness to the earth explains why the pillow came late in the human story. A pillow is not useful in the same way when the whole sleeping system is unstable. If the ground is damp, the first problem is not the height of the head. If the cold rises through the body, the first problem is insulation. If insects gather, smoke, ash, or plant materials may matter more than softness. If people must move again soon, a separate head cushion may not be worth its weight or care. The ground trained sleep to be practical before it became comfortable. It taught the body to accept small compromises. One angle for warmth, another for protection, another for the simple relief of lying down. And in that older arrangement, the missing pillow is not an empty space waiting to be filled. It is a sign that the head had not yet been granted a world apart from the rest of the body. It still belonged to the earth, to the night, and to the first hard surface every human lineage had to learn before comfort could begin. The ground did more than hold the sleeping body. It decided which parts of the body would feel night first. A pillow changes that decision. It gives the head a chosen distance from the surface below. It creates a small protected layer between skull and earth, between face and dust, between neck and the rough angle made by shoulder and ground. Without that layer, the body met the world more directly. Cold could rise through the side of the face. Dampness could make one position impossible. Small stones could press against the temple. Roots, ridges, ash, leaves, or hardened soil could guide the head into angles that were not chosen for comfort, but accepted because the whole body needed rest. In the modern bedroom, discomfort often appears as a flaw in the object. The pillow is too high, the mattress too firm, the fabric too warm. In an older, sleeping world, discomfort was part of the landscape itself. The body did not correct it by replacing a product. It corrected it by shifting, curling, leaning, sharing warmth, adding loose material, or finding another patch of ground. This brings the question of the pillow closer to the body. The skull is rounded and heavy. The neck is mobile, but vulnerable to awkward angles. The shoulder lifts the upper body when lying on one side, creating a gap between the head and the surface. A pillow now fills that gap so smoothly that the problem can be forgotten. But before a shaped object existed for that purpose, the gap remained a small nightly challenge. A forearm might fill it for a while. A rolled hide might help. A bundle of plants might soften it. The body might choose the back instead of the side, or curl in a way that changed pressure on the neck. None of these solutions had to be perfect. They only had to be good enough for sleep to happen. That phrase, good enough, belongs deeply to human origins. Evolution does not require perfect comfort. It works through survival, reproduction, adaptation, and repeated tolerances. The ancestral body did not need a pillow to sleep. It needed conditions that allowed enough rest to recover, remain alert later, and continue living inside a demanding environment. The ground, therefore, was not only a surface, it was a teacher of limits. It taught the sleeping body that rest could happen without softness, but rarely without adjustment. It taught that warmth mattered before elegance, safety before posture, and group closeness before personal space. A person lying near others might have found support through contact, not furniture. A child might sleep against an adult body. An adult might place the head near a folded arm or against a skin used for many other purposes. The same material that carried warmth during the day could become part of the sleeping arrangement at night. This is important because the pillow as we know it is specialized. It has one main purpose. The older sleeping world often used materials that had many purposes. A hide could cover, carry, protect, wrap, or cushion. Dry grass could insulate the body from cold ground, not only support the head. Ash and plant layers could help with dampness or pests in some contexts. A raised natural surface could protect more of the body than a small object ever could. Sleep was built from multi-purpose answers. The head was included in those answers, but it was not yet the center of its own design. Archaeology sometimes gives glimpses of prepared bedding or sleeping surfaces, yet it also reminds us how much disappears. The ground can preserve stone, bone, ash, and the outlines of ancient activity, but the most intimate details of a sleeping head are usually gone. We are left with caution. We can say that human beings almost certainly used available materials to make rest easier when they could. We should not say that every ancient group slept with nothing beneath the head, or that no one ever shaped support from what was nearby. The stronger idea is simpler and more reliable. For a long span of human life, the ground remained the main reference point for sleep, and any support for the head was often temporary, local, and practical. The pillow came later because the sleeping world itself had to change first. The body had to move from direct negotiation with Earth toward repeated arrangements, stored materials, and more stable places of rest. Until then, the ground shaped the neck, the shoulder, the face, and the meaning of comfort. It reminded the body that sleep began not with softness, but with contact. And for countless nights before the pillow became ordinary, the human head entered sleep by accepting the surface that the world gave it. The ground was never the same from one human night to another. This is one reason a pillow could not easily belong to the earliest shape of sleep. A pillow suggests repetition. It suggests that the body returns to one place, to one object, to one expected height beneath the head. But the ground changes with weather, season, movement, and use. A patch of earth that feels dry in the afternoon may become cold after sunset. Sand may soften the weight of the body but shift under the head. Leaves may cushion for a moment but hold moisture. Grass may raise the body slightly but flatten through the night. Stone may offer dryness and protection from mud, while also forcing the skull, shoulder, and hip into hard contact. Even inside a shelter, the surface under the body could be smoke-darkened, packed down, shared by others, and shaped by the work of daily life. The head rested on all of this, not as a separate problem, but as one part of the whole body's contact with place. When we ask why so much of human history had no pillow, we are also asking why sleep remained tied to unstable surfaces for so long. The answer begins with mobility, climate, and material limits, but it also begins with the fact that the body is able to rest in imperfect conditions. Human beings did not need an ideal surface before sleep could happen. They needed enough shelter, enough warmth, enough trust, enough exhaustion, and enough protection from immediate danger. The ground did not have to become comfortable in a modern sense. It only had to become acceptable for a body that could no longer stay awake. This older acceptance shaped sleep in ways that are easy to forget. A person might choose a place where the head could lie slightly higher, not because of neck alignment as we think of it now, but because the slope kept the face away from damp soil. Another might settle near a fire, where warmth reached one side of the body while the other side remained exposed. A group might sleep close together so the edges of individual bodies became part of the sleeping arrangement. In such a world, support did not always come from objects. It came from posture, from proximity, from the lay of the land, from skins and plants used for many purposes, and from the repeated knowledge of where the earth was least unforgiving. This makes the ground almost like an ancient record of human compromise. It held the weight of tired bodies, but it also shaped the limits of what those bodies expected. A modern sleeper often treats discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. The pillow must be changed. The bed must be adjusted. The room must be quieter. But in older human conditions, discomfort did not always mean failure. It could simply mean the night was being negotiated. The shoulder might ache and then shift. The arm might go numb and then move. The head might turn away from smoke or insects. The body might wake briefly, listen, and settle again. Sleep was not necessarily one smooth descent into comfort. It could be broken, watchful, shared, and physically aware of the surface beneath it. This does not make ancient sleep worse in every way, and it does not make modern sleep false. It only shows that the pillow belongs to a later stage of control, when humans increasingly separated the sleeping body from the raw surface of the world. Before that separation, the ground was the first and most constant teacher. It taught that softness was useful but not guaranteed. It taught that rest was possible without a personal object under the head. It taught that the body could fold itself around place, instead of expecting place to be shaped around the body. And because these lessons were repeated across countless nights, climates, and generations, the missing pillow becomes more than a detail of household history. It becomes a quiet sign of how long humans slept inside the world rather than above it. The head was lowered onto whatever the night allowed, and from that contact with earth, cold, slope, ash, grass, skin, and shared warmth, human sleep learned its first shape. The human body did not begin its history inside softness. It began inside a world of pressure, slope, weight, temperature, and constant adjustment. This matters because the pillow is not only a household object, it is also a quiet statement about what the body has come to expect. A modern sleeper often feels that the head should be lifted, the neck should be held, and the face should be kept away from the surface below. When that support is missing, the body may feel exposed, awkward, or unfinished. But this feeling should not be mistaken for a timeless biological rule. The deeper human body was shaped across long ages when sleep did not arrive with a prepared object under the head. The neck, shoulders, back, and nervous system belong to a life in which rest had to happen under many conditions, not only ideal ones. This does not mean the body preferred discomfort. It means the body was flexible enough to survive it. A human neck is mobile because the head must turn, listen, scan, balance, and respond. A human shoulder can absorb weight when the body lies on one side. The spine can curve, curl, extend, and shift through the night. These are not perfect solutions, and they do not prove that sleeping without a pillow is better. They only remind us that the body was never designed around a single sleeping object. It was built through compromise. When the head lowered toward the ground, the whole body had to solve the problem together. The arm might become a support, the shoulder might create an angle, the knees might draw upward to reduce strain, the back might roll slightly away from a hard point in the earth, the face might turn toward warmer air or away from smoke. The body was not seeking the clean geometry of modern sleep posture. It was seeking a position that allowed enough rest to continue living. This older biological story is important because comfort often feels natural once it becomes habitual. A pillow trains the body through repetition. Night after night, it fills the space between skull, neck, shoulder, and bed. It reduces the need for small adjustments. It makes one posture easier to repeat. Over time, the absence of that object can feel like a loss. Even though earlier humans lived without that exact expectation for most of the human timeline, the modern discomfort of having no pillow is real, but it is also historically shaped. It comes from a body that has learned a new sleeping environment. The ancestral body learned a different one. It learned that the head might rest lower. It learned that the shoulder might carry more pressure. It learned that sleep might include waking, shifting, listening, and settling again. It learned that rest could be interrupted without being meaningless. This is where the title becomes deeper than a simple question about furniture. The missing pillow points toward a body that expected less separation between itself and the world. The head was not always treated as something needing a private cushion. It was part of a living organism arranged against the whole environment. If the ground was cold, the body curled. If the surface was hard, the body shifted weight. If the group was close, warmth and contact changed the shape of sleep. If material was available, people used it. But the body did not wait for a perfect object before allowing sleep to begin. Human biology works with thresholds, not ideals. Enough safety, enough warmth. Enough exhaustion, enough support, enough darkness, enough group protection. These were the older conditions. The pillow belongs to a later refinement of those conditions, when support could be isolated and assigned to one part of the body. Before that refinement, the body carried more of the responsibility itself. It made rest possible through muscle release, posture, social closeness, and repeated tolerance of uneven surfaces. This does not make the ancient body stronger in a romantic way, and it does not make the modern body weak. It only shows how expectation changes when the environment changes. A person raised with a pillow may feel that the neck cannot rest without one. A person raised in a different sleeping culture may find other supports normal. Across human history, the body has been capable of many sleeping arrangements because survival rarely offered only one. The biological truth is not that pillows are unnatural and not that humans should abandon them. The quieter truth is that the body's sense of normal can be trained by the world around it. For a very long time, that world did not include a soft object waiting beneath the head. It included earth, skin, grass, wood, stone, warmth, fatigue, and the need to sleep before another day began. So when we ask why most of human history had no pillow, part of the answer begins inside the body itself, a body that did not expect softness first, but learned to rest through adaptation, imperfection, and the ancient ability to make almost any safe enough place become night. A pillow seems to solve a simple problem. The head is heavy, the neck is narrow, and the shoulder creates a gap when the body lies on its side. But the older human body did not meet that problem in only one way. It met it through movement. It met it through posture. It met it through the whole body changing shape around the ground. This is one of the reasons the history of sleep cannot be reduced to the history of objects. Long before a soft support became expected, the body itself acted as the first adjustable system. The arm could fold beneath the head, the hand could rest under the cheek, the shoulder could lift or release. The knees could bend toward the chest, changing the pull on the spine. The body could roll from one side to the back, or from the back toward the warmth of another person. None of these movements were perfect, and none of them should be turned into a modern instruction. They only show that sleep was not once dependent on a single prepared shape. It was something the body found through small corrections. This older flexibility matters because human beings did not evolve in a world where rest was always clean, flat, and private. The body had to pass from wakefulness into sleep while still feeling temperature, pressure, sound, and the presence of others. The nervous system did not shut off like a lamp. It lowered its attention, but it remained connected to the surrounding world. A sleeping person might wake briefly, shift the head, listen, turn away from smoke, move closer to warmth, or adjust an arm that had become numb. Modern sleep often imagines stillness as the ideal. Older sleep may have been more broken, more responsive, and more physically involved with the environment. In that world, the lack of a pillow did not mean the lack of all support. It meant support was not fixed in one object. It moved through the body, through nearby materials, and through the sleeping group. A child resting against an adult body did not need the same solution as a lone adult lying on packed earth. A person near a fire did not meet the same night as a person on damp ground farther from heat. Someone wrapped in a hide might use the edge of that material differently from someone resting on plants or bare soil. The biological body allowed these variations because it was not built for one exact sleeping arrangement. It was built for range. Range is not the same as comfort. Range means the body can survive across many conditions, even when some of them are uncomfortable. The neck can tolerate many angles for limited periods, though not all are pleasant. The shoulders can carry pressure, though they may ache. The spine can bend and settle, though it may shift again before morning. Fatigue itself changes the threshold of what the body accepts. A person who has walked, worked, watched, carried, or searched through the day may sleep in a position that would feel difficult to someone surrounded by modern bedding. That does not make ancient rest ideal. It only reminds us that the body's demand for comfort is shaped by what the body repeatedly receives. When softness becomes ordinary, its absence becomes loud. When hard surfaces are ordinary, the body learns a different map of tolerable positions. This is why the pillow arrived not because the body suddenly became unable to sleep without one, but because human life gradually created more stable ways to answer an old problem. Once people had repeated sleeping spaces, more stored textiles, more controlled interiors, and more separation from bare ground, the head could receive a support made mainly for itself. Before that, the head remained part of a broader biological negotiation. It did not float above the body as a special case. It followed the shoulder, the arm, the curve of the spine, the warmth of the group, and the uneven facts of the surface below. The missing pillow, therefore, reveals a quieter truth about human biology. Much of what feels necessary may actually be familiar, and much of what once felt normal may now feel strange because the world around the body has changed. The modern pillow quietly changes the way the body understands the night. It makes the head feel as if it has a proper destination. It makes the neck feel as if rest should come with a prepared curve. It makes the shoulder less responsible for the angle of sleep. After years of this repetition, the body may begin to treat the pillow not as an invention, but as part of the natural order of lying down. This is why sleeping without one can feel so strange. The discomfort is not imaginary. A familiar support has been removed. But the deeper history of human sleep suggests that this feeling is not the same as an ancient biological requirement. It is a learned expectation, formed by a body that has spent many nights inside a very particular sleeping system. Earlier, humans belonged to a different system. Their bodies were not waiting for a soft block of material beneath the head before rest could begin. They were responding to ground, warmth, group closeness, weather, fatigue, and safety. The neck and shoulders did not live outside discomfort, but they lived inside a wider range of possible sleeping arrangements. This is the biological point that must be held carefully. Human beings are not machines designed for one perfect sleep posture. They are organisms shaped by compromise. The head is heavy, but it can rest in many ways. The spine benefits from support, but support can come from posture, surface, contact, or temporary material. The nervous system needs sleep, but sleep can happen in conditions that are not ideal. Across the long human past, the body's task was not to find perfect comfort every night. It was to recover enough. It was to lower energy use, restore attention, preserve memory, repair tissues, and prepare for another day, even when the surface beneath the head was imperfect. That older body did not need to believe the night was pleasant before it could sleep. It only needed the world to become safe enough, warm enough, and quiet enough for sleep to take hold. The absence of the pillow therefore points to a different kind of bodily intelligence. It was not intelligence in the sense of planning or invention alone. It was the intelligence of adjustment. The body shifted pressure away from one side. It curled to protect heat. It used the arm until the arm needed release. It leaned against another body when warmth mattered. It accepted a raised patch of earth or a folded skin, without turning that support into a permanent object. Over countless nights, these small adjustments allowed human sleep to continue before comfort became specialized. The head did not need a named object. It needed enough contact, enough angle, and enough trust in the place where the body had stopped. This also explains why the pillow is not simply a sign of progress from bad sleep to good sleep. That would make the story too flat. The pillow is better understood as one stage in the growing control of the sleeping environment. As human communities became more settled in many regions, as materials could be stored, as woven textiles and bedding became more available in some societies, and as sleeping places became more repeatable, the body could expect more from the night. The head could be given a separate support. Comfort could be isolated, shaped, and returned to again and again. But before that shift, comfort was scattered through many smaller practices. It was in the choice of ground. It was in the position near fire. It was in the warmth of others. It was in the dry grass under the body, the hide over the shoulders, the arm beneath the cheek, the habit of waking and turning before discomfort became too sharp. The modern pillow gathers part of that scattered comfort into one object. It simplifies an older negotiation. Yet something is also hidden by that simplicity. When the pillow becomes normal, the body forgets how much sleep once depended on the whole environment. It forgets that rest was once tied to landscape, season, group life, and the practical limits of what could be carried or kept. It forgets that the human head once lowered into sleep without a special promise beneath it. That forgetting is not a failure. It is what happens when a late comfort becomes ordinary. The body adapts to the world it is given and then calls that world natural. So the deeper answer in this part of the story is not that humans were meant to suffer without pillows, and not that pillows are unnecessary. The answer is quieter. For most of human history, the body did not expect softness first. It expected a place. It expected contact. It expected adjustment. It expected the night to be negotiated rather than arranged. And from that older expectation, the human body carried sleep forward through ages when the head rested not on a personal cushion, but on whatever the earth, the arm, the skin, the grass, and the tired body could make sufficient. Long before the pillow became a separate object, human beings probably used many things that were never meant to be pillows at all. This is the key difference between a world of temporary support and a world of designed comfort. A modern pillow has a clear identity. It belongs to sleep. It is shaped, stored, cleaned, and returned to the head night after night. But in older human life, many supports were borrowed from other uses. A hide that helped protect the body from cold could be folded near the shoulder. A bundle of dry grass could soften the ground beneath the upper body. A woven mat, where such materials existed, could reduce contact with dirt or dampness. A forearm could lift the head for a while. A rolled garment, a skin, a bag, a piece of bark, or a smooth rise in the earth could become useful for it, only because the night required it. These were not pillows in the modern sense. They were answers made from whatever the day had already provided. This matters because the absence of a pillow does not mean the absence of intelligence or care. Human beings have always tried to make the body more bearable when conditions allowed. The older story is not a picture of people lying helplessly on hard ground with no adjustment. It is a picture of practical adaptation. If a surface was too cold, people could add plant material. If the ground was uneven, they could choose another place or place something beneath the body. If the head needed a slight lift, the arm or nearby material could serve for a time. But these solutions were temporary because life itself was often temporary in place. A sleeping support might be used one night and carried away the next morning for another purpose. It might be burned, worn, traded, cut, lost, rotted, or left behind. It might never become an object with one fixed meaning. That is why the history of the pillow is so difficult to see in deep time. Stone tools survive. Hearths leave marks. Bones can remain. Some prepared sleeping surfaces can be detected under rare conditions. But the ordinary support beneath a tired head often disappears without leaving a clear sign. A folded hide does not announce whether it held a shoulder, a child, a tool bundle, or a head. Grass bedding can show that people changed the surface beneath the body, but it cannot always tell us exactly how one person arranged the neck during one night. A human arm leaves no artifact at all. Because of this, the most honest view must stay cautious. It is reasonable to think that people used available materials for comfort when possible. It is not reasonable to turn that into a precise claim that every group had pillows, or that no group ever did. The evidence invites a slower understanding. Before the designed pillow, there was a long age of borrowed support. This borrowed support fits the older human world better than a specialized cushion. In a mobile life, an object had to justify being carried. It had to protect from cold, help with food, assist with tools, cover the body, hold something, or serve several needs. A pillow made only for the head might not have been worth the weight, the space, or the care, especially when a forearm, folded skin, or small rise in the ground could solve enough of the problem. Even in more settled communities, material limits still mattered. Soft filling had to be gathered, cloth had to be made, cleanliness had to be maintained. Pests, dampness, smoke, and crowding could change what counted as useful bedding. The head was important, but it was not always given its own permanent object. It rested within a larger economy of materials, where nearly everything had to do more than one job. This is where the pillow becomes a sign of social change as much as bodily comfort. When a support stops being borrowed and becomes designed, something has shifted. The sleeping place has become more repeatable. Materials have become more available. The body has begun to expect a prepared surface not just under the whole body, but under the head itself. Until that change became common, sleep was built from flexible arrangements. A skin folded tonight and worn tomorrow, grass gathered tonight and left behind later, an arm used until it needed to move, a mat that belonged to the whole sleeping surface rather than to the head alone. The older human head did not always rest on nothing. More often, it rested on things that were still unnamed by sleep. And from those unnamed supports, the later pillow slowly becomes understandable, not as the beginning of comfort, but as the moment when one temporary answer finally became a permanent object. A temporary support is easy to use and easy to lose. That is one of the quiet reasons it rarely becomes visible in history. A pillow, in the modern sense, can be named, owned, stored, washed, placed, and expected. It has a fixed identity. But the older supports beneath the human head often belong to a world where identity was less fixed. The same piece of material might help carry something during the day, cover a body at night, soften the ground during sleep, wrap a child, protect food, or shield a person from wind. When it was folded under the head, it did not become a pillow in the way we mean the word now. It became a momentary answer. Its meaning came from the need of that night, not from a design made only for sleep. This difference is important because it keeps the story honest. It would be too easy to say that ancient people had no comfort at all, and it would be just as misleading to imagine that every folded skin or plant layer was already a pillow. The older reality was probably more practical and less neat. Human beings used what was close. They changed the surface when they could. They protected the body from cold, dampness, insects, and pressure. But many of these changes served the whole body, not only the head. A layer of dry grass beneath the torso might help the skull only indirectly. A skin placed under the shoulders might lift the neck by accident rather than by design. A rolled edge of clothing might become useful for one night, then return to another purpose in the morning. The head received support from a moving system of materials, not from a single object waiting faithfully in place. This also explains why the pillow belongs to a later stage of settled expectation. To keep a pillow, people need more than the idea of comfort. They need materials that can be spared. They need a place where an object can remain. They need enough stability for repeated use. They need some way to manage dirt, sweat, smoke, moisture, and pests. A soft object that touches the face every night is not simple in a world where cleaning is difficult and materials are valuable. In a mobile life, the cost is even clearer. Anything carried from place to place must compete with tools, coverings, food, containers, fire-making materials, and objects with direct survival value. A separate head cushion used mainly during sleep may not be the first thing chosen when weight and space matter. A folded hide, an arm, a bundle of plants, or the slope of the ground can be good enough. That phrase returns again because it is central to human origins. Good enough is not careless. It is the logic of survival under limits. The body does not always require the best possible support. It requires enough support to sleep, recover, and rise again. Temporary materials fit that logic. They do not promise luxury. They reduce the worst pressure. They soften one hard edge. They lift the head slightly when needed. They keep the face away from dampness for a few hours. They help the body enter sleep without creating a separate world of comfort around it. Archaeology has trouble catching these small acts because they sit between object and behavior. A stone tool carries its purpose in its shape. A hearth carries its purpose in ash and heat-altered earth. But a bundle of grass beneath a tired head may look like bedding, flooring, waste plant material, or nothing at all after enough time has passed. A hide may not survive. A woven object may decay. A wooden support may rot, burn, or be reused. The human arm, perhaps one of the oldest head supports, leaves no trace except in the body's own ability to fold around itself. So the missing pillow is partly a missing artifact, but it is also a missing category. For much of the past, support for the head may have existed without becoming a thing separate enough to be counted. It was hidden inside other materials and other gestures. This is why the title's question leads beyond furniture. It asks when human sleep became organized enough for one part of the body to receive its own object. Before that, the head shared the fate of the rest of the body. It accepted whatever insulation, surface, warmth, and shelter could be assembled. It depended on the same skins that covered the body, the same plants that softened the ground, the same closeness that protected the group, and the same landscape that shaped every other movement of life. A modern pillow separates the head from this wider system. It turns support into a small personal possession. But temporary supports belonged to a different relationship with the world. They were flexible, uncertain, and practical. They remind us that comfort did not begin as a product. It began as adjustment. It began with hands moving material into place, with bodies shifting on rough surfaces, with people learning which things could soften the night for a while, and with the quiet acceptance that by morning, the object under the head might stop being a pillow and become something else again. The difference between a temporary support and a true pillow is the difference between using the world and reshaping the world. A folded skin beneath the head may help for one night, but it does not yet create a lasting expectation. A forearm may lift the skull away from the ground, but it cannot remain there without the body eventually asking for relief. A bundle of grass may soften pressure, but it belongs to the season, the place, the dryness of the day, and the decision to gather it. These supports are real, but they are unstable. They appear when needed and vanish when conditions change. A pillow, by contrast, carries memory. It can wait for the sleeper. It can hold the shape of repeated use. It can become personal. That is why its absence across so much of human history tells us something deeper than a lack of fabric or filling. It tells us that sleep had not yet become fully separated from the shifting materials of daily life. The head rested on whatever could be spared, found, folded, leaned against, or shared, and that support rarely stood apart from the rest of survival. In a life close to the ground, almost nothing was only one thing. A hide could be clothing, shelter, bedding, cover, warmth, and cushion. A woven surface could be a mat, a sleeping layer, a carrying surface, or a barrier against dirt. Dry plants could insulate the whole body, reduce dampness, discourage some insects, or soften contact with the earth. Even a piece of wood or bark might be used because it was near, smooth enough, and useful enough for the night. The head entered these arrangements as part of the body, not as a separate demand. It borrowed support from the same materials that helped the back, hips, feet, shoulders, children, tools, and fire. This older world did not divide comfort into specialized objects as clearly as later households would. It worked through overlap. One thing served many needs because materials required labor, because movement limited what could be carried, and because the environment itself kept changing. A true pillow becomes more likely when life repeats itself in one place. When people can store bedding, return to the same sleeping area, keep material dry, protect it from pests, and treat one object as belonging mainly to night, the head can begin to receive a dedicated support. But before that, the temporary answer was often enough. Enough does not mean pleasant, it means the body could sleep. It means the neck found a tolerable angle, the face avoided the worst of the cold or dampness, the shoulder accepted pressure, and the sleeper could pass through at least part of the night without needing perfect comfort. This kind of sufficiency is easy to underestimate from a modern bedroom, where comfort has been divided into layers, and each layer has a name: mattress, pillow, sheet, blanket, cover, frame, room. In the older human world, the arrangement was less clean. The same smoke that made a shelter uncomfortable might also help keep insects away. The same hard ground that pressed against the body might also be dry and safer than mud. The same closeness to other people that reduced privacy might preserve warmth and increase protection. Comfort was not a single goal. It was balanced against other needs, and the head followed that balance. The history of the pillow therefore moves slowly from improvisation toward identity. At first there is the body itself, folding, turning, curling, and using the arm. Then there are materials gathered for the whole sleeping surface. Then there are objects used sometimes for the head, but not yet belonging only to the head. Much later, in some societies and under more settled conditions, supports begin to become recognizable as objects made or kept for headrest. Even then, they were not always soft. In some ancient cultures, headrests could be firm, shaped from wood, stone, ceramic, or other materials, sometimes serving practical, symbolic, or status-related purposes. That reminder is important because the pillow's history is not simply a straight road towards softness. The earliest dedicated head supports in some places were designed to hold the head, protect hair, raise the face, or express social meaning, not necessarily to feel like the soft pillow many people know today. Softness itself required its own conditions: available fibers, cloth production, cleaning practices, storage, and the ability to keep delicate materials useful over time. The modern pillow is therefore the result of many changes joining together. It needed settled spaces, material surplus, repeated domestic routines, and a growing habit of treating sleep as something that could be arranged in advance. Before that joining, there was no empty failure in the place where the pillow should have been. There was a living system of smaller answers: a hand under the cheek, a skin folded near the shoulder, a dry rise in the ground, a mat shared by several bodies. A bundle of plants used tonight and gone tomorrow. These were not mistakes waiting for invention to correct them. They were the quiet, practical forms of sleep before comfort became stored, named, and personal. And through them, the human head passed night after night. Not because the world was gentle, but because the body and its materials knew how to make the world just gentle enough. For a pillow to become ordinary, life must stay still long enough for comfort to gather in one place. That is why mobility is central to this story. For much of human history, many people lived in ways that required movement across landscapes, seasons, water sources, animal routes, plant cycles, and changing weather. This does not mean every group moved constantly, or that all human communities lived the same way. The human past was always varied, but across deep time, before large settled villages, towns, and cities became common in many regions, sleep often belonged to people whose lives could not be organized around heavy, specialized household objects. A modern pillow seems light because it sits inside a larger system that carries its burden for us: a room, a bed, storage, fabric, washing, replacement, and a fixed address. Remove that system, and the pillow becomes a different object. It must be carried, protected from dampness, kept clean enough to touch the face, and justified against everything else that hands and backs must move. In a mobile life, every object asks a question: is this worth taking into tomorrow? A knife, a scraper, a container, a skin, a cord, a fire-making tool, a carrying bag, or a covering may answer yes because it serves many needs. A pillow made only for the head has a harder argument to make. The head still needs support, but the body can borrow support from things already being carried. A folded skin can help, an arm can help, a bundle of grass can be gathered and left behind. A rolled piece of material can serve for a night and become something else in the morning. This is why the absence of a pillow should not be understood as a lack of care. It should be understood as a different economy of comfort. Comfort had to travel lightly. It had to hide inside useful materials. It had to be rebuilt from place to place, rather than stored forever in one object. The deeper origin of this pattern lies in the way early human life was tied to the land. Food was not always in one field, one market, or one storage room. Water was not always beside a permanent bed. Firewood, edible plants, animals, shelter, and safety all shifted with place and season. A sleeping arrangement that worked in one valley might not work on a dry plain. A support made from leaves might not exist in a colder or more open landscape. A hide might be too valuable for warmth to be shaped mainly around the neck. A mat or bundle might be useful only when materials were abundant and dry enough. The body learned to sleep under these changing conditions because staying alive meant accepting movement as part of rest. Sleep did not always wait at the end of a hallway, it waited at the end of a day's path. This changes the meaning of the pillow again. A pillow is an object of return. It becomes most useful when the sleeper comes back to it, night after night. Mobility weakens that return. If a group moves on, the ground changes, the shelter changes, the available plants change, the distance from fire changes, the number of people nearby changes. The head may still seek a small rise, but the solution is rebuilt from the new place. Over time, this kind of life favors flexibility over fixed comfort. The best support is not necessarily the softest one. It is the one that can appear wherever the body stops. A forearm is always present. A shoulder is always present. A skin or cloak already carried for warmth can be rearranged. The slope of the earth can be used. These are not luxurious answers, but they are reliable in a world where carrying too much can become dangerous. Weight matters. Bulk matters. Dryness matters. Cleanliness matters. A soft head cushion can absorb sweat, smoke, dust, insects and moisture. It may need protection that a mobile group cannot always give. So the older human knight often favoured supports that were temporary, washable by use, replaceable by landscape, or valuable for more than sleep. This is also why the pillow marks a later stage of settled life. When people remain in one place, even seasonally or more permanently, objects can begin to accumulate. Bedding can be stored. Sleeping surfaces can be improved. Materials can be kept dry. Repetition makes specialization possible. The head can receive something kept mainly for the head because the object no longer has to prove itself every morning on the road. But before that, the sleeping body belonged to movement. It could not demand that the world carry comfort for it. It had to carry only what mattered most and make the rest from whatever the night allowed. In that sense, the missing pillow is not only about the shape of sleep, it is about the shape of human life before stillness became common. The head rested without a personal cushion because the whole body lived in a world where comfort had to be light, useful, shared, and easy to leave behind. A moving life does not remove the need for rest, but it changes what rest can ask from the world. When people must follow water, animals, edible plants, seasons, weather, or safer ground, sleep cannot depend on a heavy collection of private objects. The body may be tired in the same ancient way, but the objects around that tiredness must remain simple. This is where the missing pillow becomes part of a larger human pattern. Mobility favors things that can do many jobs. A skin can cover the shoulders at night, wrap belongings during travel, shield a child from cold air, soften the ground, or become a temporary layer beneath the head. A woven mat can separate the body from dirt, serve as a work surface, and become part of sleep. A cloak, where clothing traditions allowed it, can become warmth, shade, shelter, or cushion. These objects survive in a moving life because they are not only about comfort. They belong to survival, work, carrying, protection, and heat. A pillow made mainly for the head is different. It asks to be kept for one smaller purpose. It asks to be protected from moisture, smoke, insects, dust, and wear, even when the group may need to move again. That does not mean no person ever wanted a softer place for the head. It means the desire had to pass through the harder test of usefulness. Human history began under limits that modern rooms hide. A bedroom allows objects to stay where they are. A pillow can remain on a bed because the bed remains in a room, and the room remains in a house. But when the sleeping place changes, comfort becomes less permanent. The head may still seek support, yet the support must be found again. In an arm, a folded material, a dry patch, a raised root, a smooth stone, a slope in the earth, or the edge of something carried for another reason. The pillow is late partly because fixed return is late. A repeated sleeping place makes repeated objects meaningful. A changing sleeping place makes the body and landscape do more of the work. This is not a story of people lacking intelligence. It is a story of intelligence choosing differently. A mobile group may know very well how to make sleep easier. They may choose higher ground after rain, sheltered ground after wind, open ground when visibility matters, shaded ground when heat lingers, or a place near embers when cold is the stronger danger. They may use plants, hides, ash, branches, or other materials to improve the surface beneath the whole body. But the improvement often begins with the body as a whole, not with the head alone. The first problem is often not the neck. It is cold rising from the ground. It is dampness. It is insects. It is the need to stay close to others. It is the need to wake if something changes. Under those conditions, a separate soft object for the skull may be useful, but it is not the center of the sleeping system. The head rests inside a wider arrangement built for the entire night. The logic of mobility also helps explain why ancient sleep materials are hard to trace. Things that travel lightly also disappear easily. Dry grasses decay, fibers rot, hides are reused, wood burns or breaks, a temporary bundle is taken apart. A support gathered from one campsite is left behind before it becomes an artifact with a clear meaning. Archaeology can sometimes reveal prepared surfaces, hearths, floors, or preserved headrests from later and more settled contexts, but the ordinary choices of a moving sleeper are often gone. This absence should make us cautious. We should not imagine a single way that all early humans slept. We should imagine a range of practical solutions shaped by environment, group life, and what could be carried without cost becoming too high. The pillow, as a stable object, belongs more naturally to a world where cost has changed. When people can store extra materials, repeat sleeping routines, and return to the same interior space, comfort can specialize. A thing can be made only for the head because it no longer has to serve the road, the fire, the cold, the toolkit, and the next day's travel. Before that, comfort had to remain flexible. It had to fold into other objects. It had to be shared with warmth, shelter, and protection. It had to appear at night and dissolve back into daily life by morning. So when we ask why so much of human history had no pillow, mobility gives a calm but powerful answer. For a very long time, human sleep belonged to bodies that could not carry every comfort forward. They carried what mattered most and let the land provide the rest. Mobility did not only change what people carried, it changed what people expected. A body that sleeps in one fixed room can begin to believe that sleep belongs to objects. The bed, the blanket, the pillow, the familiar corner, the repeated smell of cloth, the same height beneath the head. A body that sleeps across changing ground learns a different kind of expectation. It learns that rest must be assembled from conditions, not guaranteed by possessions. This difference reaches deeply into the story of why most human history had no pillow. The pillow is an object of permanence. It waits, it remains. It suggests that tomorrow night will resemble tonight closely enough for the same support to matter again. But a moving life does not always promise resemblance. One night may end near a riverbank. Another may end under trees. Another may end on dry earth, exposed stone, sand, grass, a shelter floor, or a place chosen mainly because wind, cold, insects, or danger seem less severe there. In such a world, the head cannot depend on one object returning faithfully. It depends on the body's ability to read the place. The sleeper looks, feels, listens, and settles. The support comes from what is already present: an arm, a folded skin, a carried covering, a small rise in the ground, a layer of plants, the warmth of another body, or the simple exhaustion that allows the neck to accept an imperfect angle. This does not mean comfort was absent. It means comfort was portable only when it could hide inside necessity. A soft object made only for the head may feel light in a modern house, but in a life of walking, carrying, gathering, and leaving, even light things become decisions. What is kept must matter through more than one night and more than one use. The older human world valued flexibility because the environment itself was not stable enough to reward too much specialization. A hide was useful because it could protect, warm, wrap, cushion, and carry. A mat was useful because it could separate the body from dirt, mark a working surface, and become part of sleep. A cloak or covering was useful because it moved with the person, changing roles as the day changed. The pillow, by contrast, becomes fully sensible when human life begins to gather around repetition, repeated floors, repeated sleeping places, repeated storage, repeated cleaning, repeated domestic habits. Before such repetition was widespread, the head found support inside things that already had a reason to be carried. That is why mobility and the missing pillow belong together. Movement kept comfort from becoming too fixed. It trained the body to treat sleep as an event, not yet as a furnished space. The place of rest was not a destination prepared in advance by objects. It was a temporary agreement between fatigue and the landscape. If the group found shelter, sleep changed. If the night was cold, sleep changed. If rain had softened the earth, sleep changed. If food, fire, or safety required moving again, sleep changed. This constant change made the body practical. It did not ask whether the head had ideal support. It asked whether the body could recover enough to continue. That older logic should not be romanticized. Uneven surfaces could be painful. Cold ground could drain warmth. Dampness, smoke, insects, crowding, and fear could disturb rest. But those difficulties also explain why the first improvements to sleep often concerned the whole body, not just the head. Insulation mattered. Dryness mattered. Group placement mattered. Shelter mattered. The neck was one concern among many. A pillow could not become central until the wider sleeping world had already become more controlled. Once people could stay longer in one place, once materials could be stored without immediate loss, once bedding could remain dry, once domestic space became more repeatable, the head could slowly be given a more stable answer. In that sense, the pillow is not only a comfort object, it is a record of reduced movement. It marks a stage when sleep no longer had to be rebuilt from the ground every night. Before that stage, the human head travelled with the rest of the body through landscapes that did not promise softness. It rested where the body stopped, on what the day allowed, under conditions that were sometimes harsh, sometimes sufficient, and rarely designed around one person's private comfort. The absence of the pillow, then, is not an empty lack in the human story. It is evidence of a long mobile life, where comfort had to be light enough to carry, ordinary enough to reuse, and humble enough to disappear by morning. Sleep is one of the strangest risks a living body must take. To survive, the body must rest, but to rest deeply, it must give up some control. The eyes close, the muscles release, the head lowers, attention turns inward. The world, however, does not become harmless just because the body is tired. This older fact belongs directly to the history of the missing pillow. A pillow is an object that invites surrender. It lets the head sink, settle, and remain in one arranged position. It belongs to a form of sleep that assumes a certain level of protection around the sleeper. But for much of human history, sleep was not surrounded by that kind of protection. It was a vulnerable state inside a living environment. Wind could change. Fire could fade. Animals could move nearby. Other people could shift, wake, leave, or approach. Rain could begin. Cold could deepen. A sound in the dark could matter. Under those conditions, the sleeping body could not be organized only around comfort. It also had to remain connected enough to the world to wake when waking was needed. This does not mean ancient humans slept in constant terror, and it does not mean they never rested deeply. Human beings could sleep because groups, shelters, fire, familiarity, and shared vigilance made rest possible. But the shape of that rest was different from a private modern night. A person lying with the head buried too deeply into softness may feel safe in a bedroom, but in an older setting, the head, ears, face, and upper body were part of the body's warning system. The head might need to turn toward a sound. The ears might need to remain less muffled. The body might need to rise quickly or shift toward others. A very soft, fixed support was not always the most useful answer when readiness mattered. The absence of a pillow therefore reflects not only poverty of objects, but a different balance between rest and alertness. The head needed relief, but it also needed access to the night. It could rest on an arm, a skin, a slight rise in the ground, or nothing shaped at all while still remaining easy to lift. The sleeping posture may have been curled, angled, or close to others, not because it was designed for perfect spinal comfort, but because it balanced warmth, protection, and the possibility of response. In the deeper human past, sleep was often social rather than purely personal. A group could reduce danger because not every person had to be equally alert at every moment. Children, adults, elders, and others might sleep in different positions according to warmth, care, space, and vulnerability. The presence of others changed the meaning of the ground. A body was not simply alone on a surface. It was part of a cluster of breathing, warmth, smell, and partial awareness. In that arrangement, a pillow under one person's head was less important than the larger pattern of where bodies lay, how close they were to heat, how sheltered they were from wind, and how quickly someone might wake. The head rested inside a social field before it rested inside a personal object. This older risk state also helps explain why the first sleep improvements were often environmental. People could choose safer ground. They could sleep near fire. They could use shelters, walls, cave mouths, windbreaks, branches, hides, or plant layers. These were broad protections. 2045. They helped the whole body and the group. A pillow, by comparison, solves a smaller and more private problem. It becomes central only after the larger dangers have already been reduced enough for comfort to move closer to the center of sleep. When the world outside remains uncertain, the head is not only something to be cushioned, it is something to be kept available. That may be why the modern softness of the pillow feels so historically late. It belongs to nights in which the sleeper can trust walls, doors, stored bedding, stable temperature, and repeated routines. Earlier sleep did not always have that trust. It had partial trust. Enough trust to lie down. Enough trust to close the eyes. Enough trust to let the head lower for a while, but not always enough to disappear completely into softness. So, the missing pillow reveals the ancient double nature of sleep. The body had to let go, but not too far. It had to rest, but not become unreachable. It had to lower the head, but still belong to a world that might call it back. A pillow belongs to a kind of sleep in which the head can become passive. The neck releases into a prepared shape. The face turns into fabric. The ears are partly surrounded by softness. The body receives a signal that the world has been arranged well enough for surrender. But the older human night could not always send that signal so clearly. Sleep had to remain more open. The head could lower, but not disappear. The body could rest, but it often remained close to readiness. This is not because early people lacked the ability to relax, or because their nights were always filled with danger. It is because the conditions around sleep were less sealed off from the living world. A modern person can close a door, turn off a light, lower the room temperature, choose a pillow, and expect the sleeping place to remain mostly unchanged until morning. In much of the older human story, the sleeping place was more exposed to change. Firelight could weaken. Smoke could shift direction. Rain could alter the ground. Insects could become more active. A child could wake. An animal could pass near the edge of camp. Another person could move. Wind could bring sound from beyond sight. In this kind of night, the head was not only a weight that needed support. It was also the place where hearing, smell, breathing, balance, and awareness met the outside world. This gives the missing pillow a deeper meaning. A very soft or deeply enclosing support might make sense where safety is already strongly established. But in a less controlled environment, the sleeping head may need to remain easier to lift, turn, or uncover. A folded arm, a skin, a slight rise in the ground, or a simple layer beneath the shoulders allows rest without fully removing the head from the surrounding world. These supports are modest, but they are responsive. They can be abandoned quickly. They do not trap the head in one shape. They allow the sleeper to wake, listen, turn, or sit up without first escaping from comfort. This matters because sleep is never only about comfort. It is also about timing and trust. The body must decide when the world is safe enough for attention to fall. In early human settings, that decision was often shared. One person's sleep depended on the presence of others. The group, the fire, the shelter, the familiar sounds of a place, and the habits of repeated nights all helped create enough safety. But enough safety is not the same as total safety. The body could lower its guard only within limits. The head could rest. but the ears might remain open to sudden change. The face might turn away from wind or smoke. The body might sleep more lightly near the edges of a group, or more deeply near warmth and familiar bodies. We should be careful here, because no single pattern can represent all ancient sleep. Human groups lived in forests, grasslands, coasts, deserts, mountains, river valleys, and cold regions. Their risks and materials differed. But the wider principle remains steady. Where sleep is exposed, comfort must share space with alertness. The pillow, as a dedicated object for soft surrender, becomes more powerful when alertness can be placed further away from the body. Walls, roofs, doors, domestic routines, stored food, stable hearths, and community structure all help move danger outward. As that happens, the head can be treated less like a watchful part of the body and more like something to be supported for comfort. Before that shift, the head belonged to the boundary between rest and response. It lay near the ground, near smoke, near breath, near darkness, near the sounds that might or might not matter. This older balance also explains why human sleep could be broken without being meaningless. A person could wake briefly, adjust, listen, and sleep again. The body did not require one unbroken descent into softness to recover. It could pass through night in pieces, guided by fatigue, safety, warmth, and the movements of others. A pillow is useful when the goal is to hold one comfortable posture for a long time, but older sleep may often have depended on changing posture as conditions changed. The arm under the head could move when it grew tired, a skin could be pulled closer when cold increased, the body could curl or uncurl, the head could turn toward the group or away from smoke. Each adjustment kept sleep alive inside uncertainty. So the absence of the pillow is not only about what people did not have, it is about what the night demanded from the sleeping body. It demanded contact with the ground, but also the ability to rise from it. It demanded rest, but also partial awareness. It demanded warmth, but also air. It demanded closeness, but also enough space to turn. In that older world, the head did not yet rest inside a private promise of softness. It rested at the edge of trust, where sleep began only after the body had made a quiet agreement with danger, darkness, and the people nearby. The older risk of sleep did not end when the body closed its eyes. It continued in the posture of the head, in the nearness of other bodies, in the distance from fire, in the direction of wind, and in the thin boundary between rest and response. A pillow, as many people know it now, softens that boundary. It tells the head that it may settle fully, that the neck may give itself to a prepared object, that the face may turn into comfort without asking much from the world outside. But for most of the human story, the night did not offer that kind of sealed permission. The body could not treat sleep as a complete escape. It had to remain slightly available to the place around it. This is why the history of the missing pillow belongs not only to the history of comfort, but also to the history of danger. A sleeping human is strong in many ways, but also exposed. The teeth are not working. The hands are not holding tools. The eyes are not scanning distance. The upright body, so important to human movement and awareness, has lowered itself to the ground. The head, which carries the senses most needed for warning, is now close to earth, smoke, leaves, skins, dust, and the breath of others. In such a condition, support under the head could not be only soft. It also had to allow quick change. An arm beneath the cheek could be removed. A folded skin could be pushed aside. A raised patch of ground did not hold the head in place. A bundle of plants could soften contact without making the sleeper sink too far away from the surrounding world. These small supports were practical because they did not ask the body to trust too much. They helped the body rest, but they still let the body return quickly to alertness. This does not mean early humans lived in endless fear. That would be too dramatic and too simple. Human groups developed ways to make night more survivable. Fire, shelter, shared sleeping, familiar places, social bonds, and repeated habits all helped reduce risk. But reduced risk is not the same as removed risk. The sleeping body still had to accept uncertainty. A sound might be harmless, or it might matter. A movement nearby might be a member of the group, or something else. A change in wind might bring cold, smoke, or scent, Rain might turn the ground from tolerable to wet. In this older world, the head was part of a living sensor system. Even during sleep, it could not always be buried deeply into a personal cushion because the night itself had not yet been pushed far enough away. The missing pillow therefore reveals an older balance. The human body needed rest, but it also needed access. It needed to lower the head, but not lose the head. It needed darkness, but not total isolation. It needed warmth, but not suffocation. It needed closeness, but not complete immobility. This balance shaped the way sleep worked long before bedrooms, and soft bedding became ordinary. The body might sleep lightly at first, then more deeply when the group settled. It might wake, turn, listen, and sleep again. It might shift the head away from smoke, closer to warmth, or toward a sound. The support under the head had to belong to that changing rhythm. A fixed, soft, personal pillow becomes more useful when the night is already controlled enough that the head no longer has to negotiate so much. Walls, roofs, doors, stable floors, repeated sleeping places, stored bedding, and less direct exposure to animals and weather all help create that later condition. As these protections grow, the head can be treated more as a body part needing comfort and less as a boundary between sleep and danger. But before that change, the head remained closer to the old edge of the world. It rested near the ground because the whole body still lived near the ground. It rested near others because safety was not only personal. It rested on temporary support because the night itself was temporary, uncertain, and responsive. So the pillow was late not simply because people lacked softness, cloth, or filling. It was late because sleep first had to become safe enough for softness to matter more than readiness. And for a very long time, the human head entered the night with only a partial promise. Enough support to rest, enough freedom to wake, and enough trust to lower itself into darkness without fully leaving the world. When human communities became more settled in some places, the head did not immediately receive the soft pillow that many people imagine today. The first clearer head supports known from ancient societies often belonged to a different idea of sleep. They could be firm, shaped, elevated, and sometimes carefully made, but not necessarily soft. This is an important turn in the story, because it shows that the pillow did not arrive all at once as a simple comfort object. It passed through older forms of meaning. In some ancient cultures, people used headrests made from wood, stone, ceramic, or other durable materials. These objects lifted the head, but they did not always invite the head to sink. They could protect elaborate hair arrangements, keep the face away from insects or dust, raise the skull from the ground, mark status, or take part in customs that connected sleep with order, identity, and sometimes the world of the dead. The existence of such headrests does not erase the long absence of the soft pillow. Instead, it makes that absence more interesting. When people first began making dedicated supports for the head, softness was not always the main goal. The head was being given a place, but that place could be controlled, elevated, symbolic, and firm. This tells us that the human journey from ground to pillow was not a straight road from hardship to comfort. It was a slow reorganization of sleep. A settled life changes what objects can become. When people live in one place for longer periods, objects can wait. A support can remain near the sleeping area. Materials can be shaped for repeated use. A household can accumulate things that would be difficult to carry in a more mobile life. This is the condition in which a headrest can become recognizable as its own object. Yet even here, the support under the head may still reflect a world where the body is not fully separated from dust, heat, insects, status, ritual, and the social meaning of the sleeping body. A hard headrest may sound uncomfortable to a modern ear, but comfort is not the only reason people make things. Human objects often begin where practical need, available material, and cultural meaning meet. A raised support could keep the head off a surface that was not clean, or help preserve hair, or create a small boundary between the sleeper and the ground. It could also show that the sleeping place had become stable enough for a durable object to belong there. The head, after so long being supported by arms, skins, plants, ground, or improvised materials, was slowly becoming worthy of a separate design. But the design did not yet have to be soft. This is why early civilization does not immediately answer the title's question with a simple invention. It complicates it. Humans did begin to create head supports in certain places, but those supports reveal how different earlier expectations were. The modern pillow is built around softness, personal comfort, and the repeated shape of the neck during sleep. Ancient headrests could belong to a broader system: climate, hairstyle, cleanliness, insects, furniture, class, religious practice, or funerary belief. They remind us that the head has always carried more than weight. It carries the face, the hair, the senses, the identity of the person, and the boundary between alertness and sleep. Giving the head a support could therefore mean many things at once. It could be practical without being soft. It could be personal without being gentle. It could be a sleep object and also a cultural object. The deeper point is that the pillow, as modern people know it, required several changes to join together. A community had to be settled enough for a sleeping object to remain. Materials had to be available and workable. The sleeping surface had to become more repeatable. The head had to be treated as needing its own support. And only later, in many contexts, did softness become central. This gradual sequence helps keep the story truthful. It avoids pretending that early people simply slept in discomfort until someone invented the pillow. It also avoids pretending that any object under the head is the same as the soft pillow. There was a long middle zone where the head was lifted but not cushioned, protected but not cradled, marked as important but not yet placed inside the modern world of fabric and filling. In that middle zone, we can see sleep becoming more organized without becoming fully familiar. The ground is no longer the only support. The arm is no longer the only answer. A crafted object has appeared. Yet the object still carries the memory of a harder world, a world where elevation may matter more than softness, where keeping the head away from the surface may matter more than relaxing the neck, and where sleep is not only a biological need but a social position. So when we move from deep prehistory into early settled societies, the missing pillow does not suddenly appear as the thing we know. What appears first is the idea that the head can have a designed place. That idea is quiet, but it changes everything. It is the beginning of a long movement away from the earth, toward a night in which the head is no longer merely lowered wherever the body can stop, but placed, supported, and remembered by an object made to wait for it. The firm headrest is one of the most useful reminders that comfort is not always the first reason humans shape sleep. To a modern person, a hard support under the head may seem almost like the opposite of a pillow. It does not invite sinking. It does not surround the face. It does not soften the whole weight of the skull. Yet in some ancient settings, that firmness made sense. A raised object could keep the head away from dust, insects, damp floors, or the small movements of the ground beneath a sleeping area. It could help preserve hair or ornamentation. It could mark the sleeper's place. It could be durable, cleanable, and easier to keep in a household than loose, soft filling. It could also carry meanings that reach beyond sleep itself, because the head has rarely been treated as just another body part. The head holds the face. It holds the eyes, the voice, the breath, the hair, and the visible identity of the person. When a society gives the head a special object, even a hard one, it is also giving sleep a new kind of order. This is why early head supports should not be confused with the modern pillow, but they should not be dismissed either. They show the moment when the human head begins to separate from the rest of the sleeping surface. The ground still matters. The sleeping mat, floor, platform, or bedding still matters. But now the head has its own small architecture. That change could only happen where life had become stable enough for objects to wait. A crafted headrest is not something easily explained by one night of fatigue. It belongs to repetition. It belongs to a place where someone expects to sleep again, or where objects are stored, inherited, This is a major step away from the older world of improvised support. A folded arm disappears when the arm moves. A bundle of plants can be scattered. A hide can return to another use. But a carved or shaped support can remain itself. It can carry form across nights. It can outlast the person who used it. That durability is part of why such objects sometimes survive in the archaeological record more clearly than softer, more ordinary bedding. The survival of a hard object, however, can also mislead us if we are not careful. What lasts is not always what was most common. Stone, wood in favourable conditions, ceramic, and other durable materials can appear in history with more confidence than cloth, fibre, or plant filling. A soft support may vanish. A hard headrest may remain. So the evidence does not tell us that all ancient sleep was hard or that soft things were never used. It tells us that when dedicated head supports become visible, some of the clearest examples are not the soft pillows familiar today. This keeps the story grounded. The pillow's history is partly hidden because softness rarely leaves a strong trace, while firmness can. But even with that caution, the hard headrest still reveals something true about the changing shape of sleep. It shows that humans could value elevation before softness. They could want the head lifted more than cradled. They could want distance from the ground more than a gentle surface. They could want order, cleanliness, hair protection, symbolic placement, or durability. These goals make sense in households and civilizations where the sleeping body was surrounded by new concerns: floors, stored goods, status, clothing, grooming, ritual, and the management of indoor life. Once people lived closer to stored materials, domesticated spaces, and repeated social routines, sleep is no longer only a pause in survival, it becomes part of culture. Where a person sleeps, what object receives the head, how the body is placed, and what remains beside the sleeper can all begin to carry meaning. The headrest, therefore, stands between two worlds. Behind it is the older world of ground, arms, skins, grass, fire, and mobile adjustment. Ahead of it is the softer world of textiles, filled cushions, private bedding, and the modern assumption that the head should be gently supported. The headrest is not yet that modern softness. It is a bridge. It tells us that the head was becoming important enough to deserve a designed place, but not yet in the same way many people expect today. This also helps answer why the soft pillow came late. The idea of supporting the head was not enough by itself. The right materials, habits, and values had to gather around that idea. A society could know how to lift the head and still choose a firm support, because firmness solved the problem it cared about most. Softness became central only when other conditions made it practical and desirable. More available textiles, cleaner storage, stable domestic space, and a growing expectation that sleep should not only protect the body but also soothe it. In this middle stage, the human head is no longer simply resting wherever the body stops, but it has not yet fully entered the soft, private world of the modern pillow. It is held above the ground, remembered by an object, and placed inside a culture that is slowly learning to arrange the night around the sleeper. The earliest design supports for the head reveal a careful truth. Humans did not move from bare ground to soft pillows in one simple step. The change was slower, stranger, and more cultural than that. A headrest made from wood, stone, ceramic, or another firm material may seem distant from the object many people now use at night, but it belongs to the same long question. When did the human head begin to receive a place of its own during sleep? In deep prehistory, that place was often borrowed from the body and the landscape. The arm lifted the head for a while, the shoulder shaped the angle. A hide, a mat, a bundle of plants, or a raised piece of earth changed the contact between skull and ground. But when a society begins to make an object specifically to support the head, a boundary has shifted. Sleep has become more arranged. The head is no longer only resting wherever the tired body can place it. It is being positioned. It is being protected. It is being given a form that can repeat itself across nights, households, and sometimes across generations. Yet the form that appears is not always soft, because softness was only one possible answer to the problem of sleep. In some settings, elevation mattered more. A raised head could stay away from dust, crawling insects, damp surfaces, or the dirt of a floor. In other settings, keeping the hair in place may have mattered, especially when hair carried social, practical, or symbolic importance. A firm support could be more durable than a soft cushion, easier to clean, less likely to absorb moisture, and less vulnerable to decay. It could survive smoke, heat, pests, and repeated use in a way loose filling might not. It could also express order. A shaped object says that sleep is not merely collapse. It says that the body has a proper arrangement, even when consciousness has faded. This is why ancient headrests are so important to the story, but also why they must be handled carefully. They do not prove that all people slept the same way. They do not prove that soft materials were absent. They show one visible path, preserved because firm materials often leave clearer traces than cloth, grass, feather, fibre, or skin. The record of sleep is uneven. The objects that survive are not always the objects that were most comfortable, most common, or most intimate. A soft support may disappear completely, while a hard one remains long enough to be studied. Still, what survives can teach us something. It shows that the first permanent answers to the head were not necessarily built around the modern desire to sink into comfort. They were built around a wider set of human concerns: cleanliness, elevation, durability, status, ritual, and the separation of the head from the ground. That separation is the real turning point. Once the head is lifted by design, sleep begins to carry a new message. The human body is not only lying down, it is being organized. The skull is no longer simply placed on whatever surface is least harsh. It has a small structure waiting for it. This structure may be hard, but it changes the relationship between the body and the earth. It creates a deliberate space between the face and the floor, between the sleeper and the raw surface of the world. Over time, this kind of separation makes later softness easier to imagine. First, the head is raised. Later, in many places, and under the right material conditions, it can be cushioned. First, the sleeping place becomes repeatable. Later, it can become personal. First, an object becomes durable enough to remain. Later, it can become gentle enough to feel like part of the body's private night. The pillow, then, should not be seen as a sudden invention that solved an obvious problem. It is better understood as the result of several slow changes meeting one another. People needed more stable places to sleep. They needed materials that could be spared for comfort. They needed ways to store and protect those materials. They needed domestic habits that made repeated bedding normal. They also needed a cultural idea that the head deserved its own support, not only because the body was tired, but because the head itself carried identity, dignity, and meaning. In that sense, the firm, ancient headrest stands in the middle of the story. Behind it lies the older night of ground, arms, skins, grass, ash, fire, and temporary support. Ahead lies the softer night of textiles, filled cushions, private beds, and the feeling that sleep should be arranged around comfort. The headrest does not belong fully to either world. It is a bridge between them. It reminds us that human sleep became civilized before it became soft, shaped before it became gentle, and organized before it became familiar to us. So when we ask why most of human history had no pillow, early civilizations offer a subtle answer. The head had to be given a place before that place could become soft. The pillow was late because comfort was not the first language of sleep. The first language was survival. Then came elevation. Then came order. Only much later, when materials, homes, and expectations changed, could softness become the quiet object waiting beneath the head. Softness seems simple only after a society has learned how to make it ordinary. A pillow filled with fibre, feathers, wool, cotton, straw, kapok, or other soft material may appear to be a small household object, but behind it stands a long chain of conditions. Someone must gather or produce the filling. Someone must make a covering. Someone must keep it dry. Someone must protect it from dirt, insects, smoke, sweat, dampness, and decay. Someone must have a place to store it, and a reason to bring it back to the same sleeping surface again and again. Without those conditions, softness remains temporary. It may exist for a night in dry grass, folded skin, moss, leaves, or a rolled cloth, but it does not become a stable pillow. This is why softness came late in the human story. The human body needed sleep from the beginning, but the soft object under the head required more than tiredness. It required materials, labour, settlement, storage, cleaning, and repetition. In the older world of human origins, the first sleeping problem was rarely how to make the head perfectly comfortable. The first problem was how to keep the whole body alive through the night. Cold rising from the ground mattered. Dampness mattered. Smoke mattered. Insects mattered. The presence of other bodies mattered. The need to move again mattered. A soft cushion for the head could be pleasant, but pleasant things do not always survive the harder tests of usefulness. If a material was warm, it might be needed as clothing or covering. If it was absorbent, it might become dirty or damp quickly. If it was delicate, it might tear, rot, or attract pests. If it was bulky, it might be difficult to carry. Softness, in other words, has costs. Modern life hides those costs because the pillow arrives already made, already filled, already covered, already placed on a bed. But in deeper history, every soft layer had to be taken from the world by effort. Plant fibers had to be gathered or processed. Animal materials had to be cleaned, preserved, and protected. Textiles required skill, time, and tools. Even simple bedding could demand repeated labor. A pillow was not merely something the body wanted. It was something a society had to be able to afford in material terms. This helps explain why early dedicated head supports in some societies could be hard rather than soft. A firm headrest can be durable. It can be shaped once and used many times. It can resist dirt better than loose filling. It can be cleaned more easily in some contexts. It can keep the head raised without needing large amounts of soft material. A soft pillow, by contrast, must be maintained. It must remain usable against the face. It must not become wet, rotten, smoky, infested, or foul. That makes softness more demanding than it looks. For the modern sleeper, softness is the basic promise of a pillow. For much of history, softness may have been a luxury, a temporary advantage, or a local solution rather than a universal standard. This does not mean people in the past never sought it. Human beings have always noticed relief. They have always known the difference between a sharp surface and a gentle one. They have always used available materials to reduce discomfort when they could. But knowing softness feels good is not the same as being able to make softness permanent. The deeper question is not whether ancient people desired comfort. The deeper question is when comfort could be stored. A pile of dry grass can soften a night, but it may not travel well. A feather or fiber filling can cushion the head, but it needs a container. A container needs cloth or skin. Cloth or skin needs making, cleaning, and repair. A sleeping place needs to be stable enough that the object is not lost, ruined, or made useless by the next movement. When those pieces are missing, the body returns to older answers: arm, shoulder, hide, ground, slope, group warmth, and temporary material. Softness also depends on surplus. If every useful material already has a more urgent role, the head may not receive its own gentle object. A skin may be needed to keep a child warm. Fiber may be needed for cordage, clothing, baskets, nets, mats, or insulation. Feathers or plant down may be available in some environments but not others. And availability does not automatically create a pillow tradition. A society must decide, through habit and need, that the sleeping head deserves a dedicated soft object. That decision becomes easier when homes become more stable, when bedding can remain indoors, when textile production grows, when cleaning routines improve, and when sleep itself becomes more private and repeatable. So the late arrival of the soft pillow is not a mystery of ignorance. It is a history of conditions slowly gathering around the sleeping body. The head had always been heavy. The neck had always needed relief. The face had always preferred distance from dirt, cold, and dampness. But the world around the body had not always been able to provide a soft answer that could last. Before softness became ordinary, sleep relied on what was durable, available, portable, and good enough. The pillow came late because softness had to become more than a moment. It had to become an object that could wait through the day, return at night, and remain clean and useful beside a body that now expected comfort to be there. Softness becomes ordinary only when a society can protect it from the very world that makes sleep difficult. This is one quiet reason the soft pillow arrived late. A hard object can survive smoke, dust, damp floors, rough hands, and long use. A carved headrest, a smooth piece of wood, or a raised surface does not absorb the night in the same way. But a soft pillow is different. It takes in sweat, skin oil, smoke, moisture, dust, and the warmth that attracts insects and other small life. Because it touches the face, it must be kept cleaner than many other objects. The cheek rests on it, the mouth and nose come close to it. Hair presses into it for many hours. For such an object to become normal, the sleeping world must already be more controlled than the older ground-based world of human origins. There must be a dry place to keep it. There must be cloth or skin to hold the filling. There must be time to air it, repair it, replace it, and protect it from decay. Without those conditions, softness can still appear, but only briefly. Dry grass can soften one night and be scattered the next day. A folded hide can support the head, but it may be needed more urgently as clothing, covering, carrying material or warmth for the whole body. Plant fibers can be gathered, but they may be more valuable as cordage, nets, baskets, mats, or insulation. The head may want relief, yet the whole life around the body decides whether that relief can become a separate object. This is why the pillow should not be treated as a simple invention waiting for someone to notice that softness feels good. Human beings have always known the difference between harsh contact and gentler contact. The harder question is when softness could be stored. A soft pillow needs a world where useful material can be set aside for comfort, not consumed immediately by survival. It needs repeated sleeping places. It needs domestic routines. It needs some form of surplus. In a mobile or materially limited life, softness often had to remain scattered. It could be found in a skin beneath the shoulder, a layer of plants under the body, a rolled edge of clothing, the warmth of another person, or a patch of ground made less severe by preparation. These answers helped, but they did not yet gather softness into one stable object for the head. The modern pillow hides many layers of labour inside its quiet shape. Someone must produce or collect filling. Someone must make the cover. Someone must keep it dry. Someone must remove dirt and replace worn material. Even a simple pillow depends on cleaning, storage, and return. That is why softness came after larger changes in human life. When shelters improved, when floors became more separate from bare earth, when bedding could remain in one place, and when textiles became more available in some societies, the head could slowly receive a dedicated, soft answer. Before that, the main sleep problems were often larger than the neck. Cold, dampness, insects, smoke, crowding, and safety. A pillow became more important when those wider pressures had already been reduced enough for comfort to move closer to the center of sleep. So the late arrival of the soft pillow is not proof that earlier humans ignored comfort. It shows that comfort needed protection before it could become permanent. The body may have wanted a gentler place for the head long before the world could reliably provide one. For most of human history, softness was not absent, but it was fragile, temporary, shared, and difficult to keep. Only when human life could preserve softness through the day could it return at night as a pillow. The soft pillow became possible only when softness stopped being a passing condition and became something a household could keep. This is the final step in understanding why it came so late. A person can find softness in the world without owning it. Dry leaves can soften the ground. Grass can lift the shoulder. Fur can warm the neck. A folded cloth can ease the angle of the head for one night. But these things are not yet a pillow unless they can remain useful, return to the sleeper, and hold a stable role in the place of sleep. That change required more than comfort. It required a settled rhythm around the body. The sleeping place had to become repeatable. Materials had to be stored instead of used immediately for something more urgent. Textiles had to become common enough in some communities for cloth to cover and contain filling. Homes had to protect bedding from rain, mud, pests, and smoke as much as possible. The body had to begin expecting that the head would meet the same prepared support again. In the older human world, softness was often too vulnerable to become permanent. A plant layer might be useful, but it could dry out, rot, attract insects, flatten, or be abandoned when people moved. Animal material could be warm and valuable, but it might be needed over the whole body rather than under only the head. Fibers could cushion, but they also served many other purposes: tying, weaving, carrying, insulating, and making tools or containers. A separate soft support for the head becomes reasonable only when the surrounding life can spare the material and protect the object. This is why the pillow belongs to the history of surplus as much as the history of sleep. Surplus does not always mean wealth in a grand sense. It can mean simply having enough extra material, time, shelter, and repetition to let one object specialize. The head had always been heavy. The neck had always needed relief. The face had always preferred distance from dampness, dust, and hard pressure. But for a long time, those needs were answered by whatever was already useful for other reasons. The pillow appeared when those scattered answers could be gathered into one object. First, the body used the ground, the arm, the shoulder, the skin, the mat, the grass, and the slope of the earth. Later, in some societies, firm headrests gave the head a designed place. Later still, soft pillows became more familiar where materials, homes and habits allowed them to survive. This was not one invention spreading evenly everywhere. Different communities slept in different ways, with different climates, materials, beliefs and social habits. Some people used firm supports, some used soft bedding. Some used folded cloths, mats, skins, or nothing that would clearly match the modern word pillow. The honest story is not a single origin. It is a slow gathering of conditions. Softness had to become clean enough, dry enough, durable enough, and ordinary enough to touch the face night after night. When that happened, the pillow changed the meaning of sleep. It gave the head a private expectation. It reduced direct contact with the ground and with improvised supports. It made the neck part of a more controlled sleeping system. Yet it also hid the older intelligence of the body, the intelligence that had once found rest through adjustment rather than possession. For most of human history, sleep did not wait for a soft cushion. It came when the body, the group, the surface, and the night reached a fragile agreement. The soft pillow was late because it required that agreement to become stable. Only after the world around sleep became more settled could softness stop being a moment and become an object. The pillow becomes easier to understand when the sleeping body begins to rise away from the ground. For a very long time, the earth was not only beneath sleep, it was part of sleep. Even when people used plants, hides, mats, ash, or prepared surfaces, the body still remained close to the base of the world. Cold came upward, dampness mattered. Dust, insects, and uneven ground shaped the night. The head was not separate from these pressures. It rested within the same surface system as the shoulder, hip, back, and knees. But when human sleeping places became more controlled in some societies, something important changed. The body began to gain distance from bare earth. Floors became more defined. Platforms, mats, bedding, raised sleeping places, and later beds created layers between the body and the ground. This separation did not happen everywhere at once, and it did not look the same in every culture. But wherever sleep became more removed from raw surface conditions, the head's need changed. Once the whole body is lifted or cushioned, the head can no longer rely on the ground in the same old way. A flat sleeping surface creates a new problem. The body may be more comfortable overall, but the head still needs its own angle. On bare ground, the surface itself might be uneven enough to offer a rise. An arm, skin, or small slope could solve part of the problem. On a more even mat, platform or bed, the head becomes more clearly unsupported. The shoulder lifts the body when lying on the side, the neck bends, and the skull asks for a separate answer. In this sense, the pillow did not simply replace the ground. It appeared as human beings created a new kind of sleeping surface that made the head stand out as its own problem. This is an important shift in the title's question. For most of human history, people had no pillow, partly because sleep had not yet been divided into specialized zones. The ground took the whole body. Temporary materials helped the whole body. Warmth, shelter, and social closeness protected the whole body. But as sleeping systems became layered, the body began to be organized into parts. The back needed a surface. The skin needed covering. The head needed support. The pillow belongs to that later division. It is a sign that sleep was no longer just contact with a place, but a designed arrangement of different supports. This separation from the ground also changed the meaning of cleanliness and comfort. A raised or prepared sleeping area could reduce direct contact with dirt, mud, crawling insects, and cold soil. Once the body no longer had to negotiate every roughness of the earth, comfort could become more precise. The question was no longer only, where can we safely lie down? It became, how should the body be placed? That question allowed the head to receive more attention. The pillow, whether firm or soft, answered the small space between the body's shape and the new surface beneath it. Yet this should not be treated as a sudden improvement that reached all people equally. Many communities continued to sleep close to the ground, on mats, hides, floors, or simple bedding. Others developed raised furniture or more elaborate bedding. Climate, wealth, materials, insects, architecture, and cultural habits all shaped the path. The honest point is more gradual. As humans increasingly separated sleep from bare earth, the head became easier to isolate as a special need. Before that separation, the head had been part of a larger negotiation with the ground. After it, the head could become the center of its own object. The pillow is late because the body first had to be lifted into a world where the ground was no longer the main support. Only then could the small distance beneath the head become important enough to be filled night after night. As the sleeping body moved farther from bare earth, sleep slowly became a layered arrangement. This layering matters because a pillow only makes full sense inside a system of layers. When the whole body lies directly on the ground, the surface is uneven, changing, and full of natural variation. A small rise, a folded arm, a patch of grass, or a slope in the soil may become enough for the head. But when people begin to sleep on more regular surfaces, the problem changes. A mat can make the body cleaner and warmer, yet it can also make the head's angle more noticeable. A raised platform can reduce dampness, insects, and cold, yet it can create a flatter plane beneath the body. A bed can separate the sleeper from the ground, yet it also asks the body to arrange itself against a surface that is more controlled and less forgiving in certain ways. In that new sleeping world, the head becomes more visible as a separate concern. The shoulder has height, the neck has a curve, the skull has weight. If the surface beneath the whole body is flat, then the space between head and support becomes clearer than it was in a rougher landscape. The pillow grows from that space. It is not only a sign of softness, it is a sign that sleep has become divided into functions. One layer lifts the body from the ground, another softens pressure, another holds warmth, another supports the head. This is very different from the older human night, where one material might serve many needs and where the land itself shaped the sleeping posture. The more sleep became arranged, the more each part of the body could receive a particular answer. The head, once supported by whatever the body and place could provide, could now be given its own object. This shift also changed the emotional meaning of sleep. A body close to the ground remains close to uncertainty. It feels the temperature of the earth, the hardness of the surface, and the small movements of the environment. A body raised above the ground enters a different relationship with night. It is still vulnerable, but it is no longer resting directly inside the raw surface of the world. That distance can create a feeling of enclosure, ownership, and return. A sleeping place can begin to feel like a place that belongs to the person or household. Once sleep becomes tied to return, the pillow becomes more useful. It can stay where the sleeper left it. It can hold the memory of repeated nights. It can become part of a familiar ritual of lying down. This was not possible in the same way when sleep had to be rebuilt from landscape and available material. Still, this change should not be told as a simple victory of comfort over hardship. Many people across history continued to sleep on floors, mats, skins, platforms, or simple surfaces without anything like the modern soft pillow. In some cultures, firm head supports remained useful. In others, folded cloths, bolsters, mats, or shared bedding shaped the night differently. The separation from the ground was uneven, local, and shaped by climate, wealth, architecture, materials, and habit. But the broad direction is important. When sleep becomes less dependent on the earth itself, the body begins to ask more specific questions. How high should the head rest? How should the neck be held? How can the face stay away from dust, dampness, or insects? How can one posture be repeated without too much strain? The pillow answers these questions only after the larger sleeping system has already changed. It is late because it belongs to a world where the ground has been pushed farther away, where sleep is more repeatable, and where the head is no longer simply one weight among many on the earth, but a part of the body given its own quiet place. Once the body is lifted away from the ground, sleep begins to feel less like an agreement with the landscape and more like an arrangement made by human hands. This is where the pillow becomes increasingly meaningful. On bare earth, the whole body negotiates with the same surface. The shoulder, hip, spine, skull, and knees all meet the ground together, each adjusting to hardness, slope, warmth, cold, or dampness. But when the sleeping place becomes more regular, raised, layered, or protected, the body is no longer simply resting inside the land. It is resting inside a small, human-made system. That system can be improved piece by piece. A mat can separate skin from dirt. A platform can create distance from dampness or crawling insects. A bed can make the surface more predictable. A blanket can hold warmth. And then, inside this new arrangement, the head begins to stand out. It is no longer just another weight lowered onto the earth. It becomes a part of the body that needs its own answer. This is one of the quiet reasons the pillow came late. The ground had to lose some of its authority before the head could gain a private support. In the older world, the head's position was shaped by the whole sleeping environment. A small mound of earth, a folded hide, a rolled arm, or a patch of grass could be enough because the entire sleeping surface was already irregular. But when people created flatter and more repeatable surfaces, a new kind of discomfort became visible. The neck did not always meet the surface easily. The shoulder lifted the upper body when lying on one side. The skull needed a stable angle. The face needed distance from dust, insects, sweat, or dampness. The pillow grew from this small space between the shaped body and the shaped sleeping surface. It was not simply a luxury added to sleep. It was part of a larger movement in which human beings slowly remade the night around their own bodies. Yet this movement was never the same everywhere. Some people slept close to the ground for reasons of climate, culture, poverty, habit, or practicality. Some used mats or firm headrests. Some used folded cloths or bedding that did not match the modern idea of a pillow. Some raised the body, but not the head, in a soft way. The history is uneven because human life is uneven. What matters is the pattern, not a single origin. As sleep became more stable, the head became easier to isolate. As homes became more repeatable, objects could remain beside the sleeper. As materials became easier to store, softness could survive. As floors, mats, platforms, and beds moved the body away from direct earth, the pillow became a natural next step in the organization of rest. This separation also changed how people felt about sleep. A body on the ground remains partly exposed to the world. A body on a prepared sleeping place begins to enter a more private zone. The pillow strengthens that zone because it receives one of the most personal parts of the body: the face, the breath, the hair, the skull, and the senses. It helps turn sleep from a temporary stop into a repeated ritual. The head returns to the same place. The body recognizes the same support. The night becomes less improvised. So when we ask why most of human history had no pillow, the answer is not only that people lacked soft materials, it is that for a very long time, sleep itself had not been separated far enough from the ground. The head still belonged to the whole body, and the whole body still belonged to the earth beneath it. Only when humans began to build distance from that earth could the pillow become the small, familiar object that now seems almost necessary. A pillow is never only a shape beneath the head. Once it becomes part of a home, it begins to carry meaning. It marks a place where the body is expected to return. It belongs to a repeated night, a familiar surface, a private smell, a household order, and the quiet feeling that sleep is not simply happening anywhere, but happening somewhere that has been prepared. This is a major change from the older human world, where the head often rested on what was available, temporary, shared, or close to the ground. In that older world, support was practical before it was symbolic. It helped the body endure cold, hardness, dampness, insects, and fatigue. But as human communities became more settled, and as sleeping places became more defined, the support beneath the head could begin to say something else. It could say that this person has a place. It could say that the night belongs to a household. It could say that the head, carrying the face and identity of the person, deserves a prepared position. This cultural meaning helps explain why the pillow did not simply appear as soon as humans noticed comfort. Comfort alone was not enough. The pillow had to enter a world where objects could become personal. A stone tool may be personal through use, but a pillow is personal through rest. It touches the face when the person is least guarded. It receives hair, breath, warmth, and the small signs of nightly habit. It is close to the body in a way that is different from a chair, a basket, or a cooking tool. Because of that, the pillow gradually becomes connected to privacy, status, cleanliness, domestic routine, and even dignity. In some cultures, What supports the head during sleep can reflect social position, household wealth, ideas of proper bodily arrangement, or beliefs about the head itself. We should be careful not to force one meaning onto all societies. Human groups have treated sleep, bedding, and the body in many different ways. But the broader pattern is clear enough. When the head receives a dedicated object, sleep has moved beyond mere stopping. It has entered culture. The missing pillow across most of human history, therefore, shows a time before sleep became so personally furnished. A person could rest, recover, dream, and wake without owning a soft object for the head. The value of sleep was not absent. The body still needed it deeply. But the meaning of sleep was carried more by the group, the fire, the shelter, the ground, and the rhythm of daily survival than by private bedding. A modern pillow can make sleep feel individual. It belongs to one head, one side of the bed, one routine. It can be chosen, replaced, adjusted, and judged. Earlier sleep was often more collective and more environmental. The head rested within a shared space, not always on a personal object. That difference is cultural as much as material. The pillow also changes the emotional boundary between the body and the world. It makes the act of lying down feel intentional. The head does not simply fall onto a surface. It is placed. The face is protected. The neck is received. The sleeper enters a small zone of trust created by objects. This is why losing a pillow, or sleeping without the familiar one, can feel strangely unsettling today. The discomfort is partly physical, but it is also a disturbance of ritual. The body expects the night to begin in a known way. That expectation would have seemed less fixed in much of the older human story, when sleep had to be shaped by place, season, movement, and available material. So the pillow becomes a quiet cultural marker. It tells us that human sleep eventually became more than biological recovery. It became a domestic act, a personal habit, and a sign of belonging to a stable world. Before that, the head rested without such a symbol. It lowered itself into sleep through earth, skin, grass, warmth, and shared protection. The pillow came later, when people could begin to turn the vulnerable act of sleep into something not only safer, but also more private, more repeatable, and more deeply their own. The cultural meaning of a pillow grows slowly because it sits at the border between the private body and the shared world. During waking life, people can protect their faces with expression, speech, posture, and attention. During sleep, the face becomes quiet. The mouth relaxes, the eyes close, the hair spreads or presses into the surface beneath it. The head, which carries the most recognizable signs of the person, becomes exposed. This is one reason an object beneath the head can become more than a practical support. It can become a sign of care. It can show that the sleeper is not simply lying wherever exhaustion has placed them, but is being received by a prepared space. In a stable household, the pillow helps turn the night into a personal routine. It marks the place where one body returns, where one breath settles, where the same shape of rest is expected again. That is very different from the older human pattern, where the head often shared support with the whole body through skins, mats, grass, ground, warmth, and closeness to others. In that older pattern, sleep could be meaningful without being private. It could belong to a group, a fire, a shelter, a seasonal camp, or a shared floor. The head did not need a personal object to be protected. Protection came from being near others, from choosing safer ground, from the knowledge of the place, from the presence of heat, and from the social habit of resting together. The pillow changes this balance. It makes sleep feel more individual. It says that this head has a known place. This face has a familiar surface. This body has a small territory of night. Over time, that territory can carry emotion. A familiar pillow may feel like home not because of its shape alone, but because it belongs to repeated safety. It has been present through many nights when the body lowered its guard and nothing terrible happened. In this way, the pillow becomes part of memory. It holds no story by itself, yet the body can attach stories to it. Childhood rooms, family houses, illness, travel, aging, recovery, loneliness, marriage, grief, or simple daily return. This emotional meaning is late because it depends on continuity. A moving life can have memory, of course, but a pillow as a personal symbol requires an object that stays close to one person across repeated nights. It requires the head to return to the same support often enough for the support to become familiar. This is why the pillow is tied to settlement, but also to the inward life of the sleeper. Once sleep is less exposed to the land, it can become more attached to the self. The head is no longer only kept off the earth. It is comforted, identified, and given a private place inside the household. Still, we should not make the mistake of thinking that modern privacy is the natural goal of all sleep. Many human societies have slept in shared spaces, on shared surfaces, or near others by choice, necessity, climate, or tradition. The pillow's cultural meaning is not universal in one form. It changes with materials, family structures, wealth, architecture, and belief. But wherever a personal head support becomes ordinary, it quietly changes the relationship between the sleeper and the night. The head is no longer only negotiating with ground, cold, smoke, and danger. It is entering a familiar object world. That is why the pillow can feel so small and so intimate at the same time. It is a late domestic answer to an ancient vulnerability, the need to lower the most recognizable and sensitive part of the body into darkness, and to trust that something will be there to receive it. A pillow becomes cultural when it stops being noticed as an invention. It enters the ordinary night so quietly that the sleeper no longer thinks of it as a sign of history. Yet it carries a long record of change. It tells us that the body has a place to return to, that materials can be kept near the sleeping surface, that softness or support can be reserved for the head, and that the night has been partly domesticated. This is why the pillow feels different from many other household objects. A bowl may hold food, a tool may shape work, a lamp may push back darkness, but a pillow receives the face when the person can no longer perform identity. During sleep, the face is not speaking, choosing, watching, or defending itself. It rests. The pillow becomes a quiet witness to that surrender. In the older human world, the head could rest safely without such an object, because safety came from other arrangements. Group presence, fire, shelter, landscape knowledge, shared routines, and temporary materials. The sleeping body belonged more openly to the environment and to the group. But as homes, bedding, and personal spaces became more stable in many societies, the head support could become part of social life. It could reflect care, order, status, cleanliness, or belonging. It could be simple or elaborate, firm or soft, shared or personal, practical or symbolic. What matters is that it gave the head a recognized place. That recognition changed the meaning of sleep. Sleep was no longer only the body's need to recover. It was also a domestic pattern, a social habit, and sometimes a marker of dignity. The absence of pillows across so much of human history reminds us that earlier people did not lack sleep, and they did not lack feeling. They lacked the later conditions that allowed sleep to become so privately furnished. Their nights could still hold warmth, closeness, rhythm, protection, fear, relief, memory, and recovery. But those meanings were carried by different things. The fire that lasted long enough, the person sleeping nearby, the dry ground found before dark, the hide pulled over the shoulder, the shelter that blocked wind, the shared knowledge that someone would wake if danger came close. The modern pillow gathers part of that wider trust into a single object. It makes trust feel personal. It turns the vulnerable lowering of the head into a repeated ritual. The body lies down, the face finds the same surface, and the night begins in a familiar way. This is also why a pillow can feel emotionally powerful even when it is physically ordinary. People may carry one while traveling, replace it reluctantly, or feel uneasy when sleeping on an unfamiliar one. The object has become tied to the nervous system's sense of safety. It signals that this place is meant for rest. That feeling would not have been the same in much of human history, when sleep depended less on a personal object and more on the condition of the whole setting. So the cultural meaning of the pillow is not separate from its biological role. It grows from the same ancient vulnerability. The head is heavy, sensitive, recognizable, and exposed. To support it is to do more than solve an angle of the neck. It is to say that the sleeper has been given a place in the night. The pillow arrived late because that message required a world stable enough to repeat it. Before that, the human head rested inside broader forms of trust, and the night itself, not a small object, held the meaning of belonging. The modern body often discovers its expectations only when they are interrupted. A person may not think much about the pillow until it is gone, too low, too high, too firm, too warm, or shaped differently from the one at home. Then the head suddenly feels misplaced. The neck searches for its familiar angle. The shoulder notices the gap. The face misses the known surface. This small discomfort reveals a major change in human sleep. The body has learned to expect support before rest begins. That expectation feels natural now, but it is not the same thing as an ancient rule. For most of the human story, the head entered sleep through a wider field of adjustment: ground, arm, skin, grass, slope, warmth, fatigue, and the presence of others. The modern pillow narrows that field. It gives the head one prepared answer, repeated so often that the body begins to treat it as necessary. This does not mean the pillow is false, useless, or harmful. It means the body's sense of normal is deeply trainable. A person raised with a certain sleeping arrangement may feel that arrangement in the bones, even if the deeper history of the species was far more varied. This is one of the quietest lessons inside the question of why so much of human history had no pillow. The body does not only inherit ancient biology, it also learns from the environment it lives in now. A child who sleeps on a soft bed with a pillow receives the same message night after night. The head belongs here, the neck should rest like this, the face should meet cloth, the body should not feel the ground. Over years, this repeated message becomes physical memory. The muscles relax in familiar ways. The nervous system associates the pillow with safety. The mind may barely notice the object, but the body remembers it. Earlier, humans learned different messages. Their bodies learned that rest might begin on a prepared plant layer, a hide, a mat, a floor, an arm, or the earth itself. They learned that sleep could include shifting, waking, listening, turning, and settling again. They learned that the head might not have one fixed place, and that comfort might come from the whole sleeping situation rather than one object. The difference is not a simple difference between strong people in the past and weak people now. That would be a false and unfair story. Modern bodies are not weaker because they use pillows. Ancient bodies were not superior because they often did not. Both bodies respond to the worlds they are given. If the world offers repeated softness, the body learns softness. If the world offers variable ground, the body learns variation. The pillow changed expectation because it became part of a larger system that reduced the need for nightly improvisation. Once the bed, floor, room, blanket, and pillow are stable, the body no longer has to solve the same problems in the same way. It can surrender faster to the familiar arrangement. But this comfort also hides the old range of human sleep. It makes the absence of support feel more dramatic than it might have felt in a life where support was always improvised. The body that now says, "I cannot sleep without a pillow," may be telling the truth about its learned comfort, not a universal truth about all human sleep. This distinction matters because it keeps the story honest. The pillow is not proof that humans were incomplete before modern bedding. It is proof that human expectation changed as the sleeping environment changed. The head, once able to rest within many practical arrangements, has become accustomed in many modern lives to a dedicated object waiting for it. That object now feels like part of the night itself. But beneath that habit remains an older body, shaped by long ages when sleep began not with perfect support, but with enough safety, enough warmth, enough fatigue, and a place where the head could finally lower. The expectation of a pillow is learned so quietly that it can feel older than it is. The body does not record the history of textiles, beds, floors, houses, and settlement in words. It records them as sensation. After enough repeated nights, the head learns where it should go. The neck learns how much support to expect. The shoulder learns that the space between body and surface will be filled. The face learns the feeling of cloth instead of earth, skin, grass, wood, or an arm. This learning is powerful because sleep is repeated every night, often for a lifetime. A habit touched so often becomes difficult to separate from need. Yet the deeper human story shows that the body's needs and the body's expectations are not always identical. The need is sleep. The need is safety, recovery, warmth, and enough support for the body to rest. The expectation is more specific. This height, this softness, this familiar surface, this object beneath the head. The pillow belongs to expectation as much as biology. It is one answer among many that became dominant in certain sleeping worlds. Earlier human bodies lived inside different answers. They did not always expect the head to be lifted by a soft object. They expected the night to be handled through adjustment. If the ground was too hard, the body shifted. If the air was cold, the body curled. If the surface was damp, people looked for a drier place or added material when they could. If the shoulder created pressure, the arm, a skin, a slope, or a small bundle might change the angle. These adjustments did not create perfect sleep, but they created enough sleep. That word, enough, matters again because the human body has always lived between ideals and limits. Modern comfort can make the ideal feel normal. A soft pillow, a stable bed, a quiet room, and controlled temperature can teach the body that rest should begin only when everything is arranged. But most of human history did not offer that kind of arrangement. The body learned to accept a wider range before sleep could begin. This does not mean modern sleepers should reject comfort, or that ancient ways were better. It means the body is shaped by repeated conditions. A person accustomed to a pillow may genuinely sleep poorly without one, just as a person accustomed to another sleeping surface may feel strange on a very soft bed. The nervous system builds trust through familiarity. The familiar pillow tells the body that the night is safe, known, and ready. Remove it, and the body may feel a small loss of control. That feeling is real, but it is also historical. It comes from living after a long transformation in which sleep became more private, more furnished, and more protected from the ground. The modern head no longer negotiates directly with Earth each night. It returns to an object designed for it. Over time, that object narrows the body's idea of rest. It makes one form of support feel natural and many older forms feel harsh, even though those older forms carried human sleep through immense stretches of time. This is the quiet change inside the title. The pillow did not only enter the bedroom, it entered the body's expectations. It taught the sleeper to feel absence where earlier people may have felt only another surface, another adjustment, another imperfect but usable night. The modern body, in this sense, is not separate from history. It is history felt in the neck, the shoulder, the face, and the first few minutes of lying down. What feels necessary tonight may be the result of many nights before it, repeated until memory becomes comfort, and comfort begins to look like nature. The modern body is not only carrying ancient biology, it is also carrying modern repetition. Every night, the same objects teach the body what sleep should feel like. The mattress teaches distance from the ground. The blanket teaches controlled warmth. The room teaches separation from weather. The pillow teaches the head that rest has a prepared place. After enough years, these lessons become silent. The body no longer notices that it has been trained by furniture, fabric, walls, and routine. It simply lies down and expects the world to answer in a familiar way. This is why the absence of a pillow can feel larger than the object itself. The head may still be able to rest, but the expected signal is missing. The neck does not receive the height it knows. The face does not meet the surface it remembers. The shoulder feels a gap that has usually been filled before the body has to think about it. In that moment, a small object reveals how deeply human sleep has changed. For most of the human story, the body did not enter night with the same narrow expectation. It had older forms of familiarity, the warmth of others, the smell of smoke, the pressure of a skin, the texture of a mat, the slope of ground, the nearness of shelter, the sound of a group settling around the fire. Those things could also teach the body safety. They could also become familiar, but they did not always give the head a single personal object waiting in the same way. The body's sense of normal was broader because the sleeping world was more variable. A person could rest with the head on an arm, a folded material, a raised edge of earth, or a surface prepared for the whole body rather than the skull alone. The point is not that ancient sleep was easy. It could be cold, interrupted, crowded, uneven, and uncomfortable. The point is that the body was accustomed to solving sleep through adjustment instead of expecting one fixed support. Modern bedding reduces the need for that adjustment. That is its comfort. and also its transformation. The pillow makes sleep more predictable. It gives the head a repeated answer before the body has to search for one. Over time, predictability becomes trust. Trust becomes habit. Habit becomes expectation. Expectation begins to feel like need. This is how a late object can become emotionally and physically powerful. The pillow is not ancient in the same way fatigue is ancient. It is not as old as the need to sleep, the need to recover, or the need to lower the head safely into darkness. But once it becomes part of nightly life, it joins those older needs so closely that the difference becomes hard to feel. A modern sleeper may say the body cannot sleep without a pillow, and in a practical sense that may be true for that person that night. But across the longer human view, the statement means something more precise. This body has learned a certain form of comfort, and now the loss of that form disturbs sleep. That understanding is gentler and more accurate than saying humans were designed for pillows or designed against them. Humans were shaped for adaptation. The body can learn many sleeping worlds. It can learn soft beds, floor mats, hammocks, firm supports, shared bedding, or improvised surfaces, depending on culture, age, habit, and environment. The pillow became powerful because one sleeping world became familiar enough to hide its own history, and when history disappears into habit, comfort begins to feel timeless. The older body beneath that habit is still there, but it is living inside a changed night, where the head has learned to wait for softness before it lets go. The story of the pillow ends most honestly not with a judgment, but with a trade. Something was gained when the human head finally found a prepared place to rest. Sleep became softer for many people. The neck could receive steadier support. The face could rise away from dirt, dampness, insects, and hard surfaces. The body could enter the night with less improvisation. A familiar pillow could help signal safety, routine, and return. These are real gains, and they should not be dismissed. Comfort is not a weakness. A body that rests well can think more clearly, recover more fully, and move through the next day with greater steadiness. Across history, many human inventions have done something similar. They have taken an old vulnerability and wrapped it in a little more protection. The pillow belongs to that quiet human effort. It is one of the small ways people turned raw night into a more bearable space. But something was also hidden when sleep became so arranged. The modern pillow can make it easy to forget that human rest once depended on the whole world around the body. It depended on ground, fire, weather, group closeness, shelter, material limits, and the careful reading of place. Before the head had its own soft object, the body had to understand the night more directly. It had to feel the slope of the earth, the cold beneath the shoulder, the warmth of another person, the direction of smoke, the dryness of grass, the value of a hide, the safety of a wall, the pressure of a surface that was not made for comfort. That older sleep was not always better. It was often harder, more exposed, and more interrupted. Yet it kept the body aware of a truth that modern rooms can conceal. Sleep is not separate from environment. It is a relationship with the conditions that allow the body to lower its guard. The pillow improved that relationship by making one part of it easier, but it also narrowed our attention. We may now think sleep begins with the right object under the head, when for most of human history it began with a broader question. Is this place safe enough for the body to stop? That question reaches back to human origins more deeply than any single piece of bedding. It belongs to the first nights when our ancestors rested near fire, near one another, near tools, near the traces of the day, and near dangers that had not fully disappeared. The absence of the pillow across so much of that story reminds us that humans did not begin as creatures of perfect comfort. They began as creatures of adjustment. They learned to sleep through compromise, not because discomfort was good, but because life demanded flexibility. The pillow marks a later victory of stability. It shows that people eventually created enough shelter, material surplus, domestic order, and trust to give the head a personal place. That is meaningful. Yet the older question remains underneath the softness. What happens when a comfort becomes so familiar that we mistake it for nature itself? Perhaps the pillow teaches us that human history is not only the story of what we invented, but also the story of what our inventions taught our bodies to expect. We gained gentler nights, cleaner support, and a stronger sense of private rest. We may have lost some awareness of how wide the body's older range once was. The value is not in rejecting the pillow or in romanticizing the ground. The value is in seeing the pillow clearly, as a late, useful, intimate answer to an ancient problem that began long before bedrooms existed. The head still lowers into darkness, as it always has. Only now, for many of us, it lowers onto a small object carrying the memory of everything that changed between the earth and sleep. The pillow is useful because it makes the night smaller. It takes one difficult part of sleep, the lowering of the head, and gives it a clear answer. Instead of the skull finding the arm, instead of the shoulder negotiating with the ground, instead of the face turning away from dust, dampness, smoke, or insects, the head meets a prepared object. This small certainty can feel deeply peaceful. It tells the body that the night has been made safer, cleaner, and more familiar than it once was. But the long history behind that certainty is worth remembering. For most of human time, sleep was not made small in this way. It was broad. It included the land beneath the body, the weather outside the shelter, the fire that might fade, the people nearby, the materials that could be gathered or carried, and the judgment that this place, for this night, was safe enough. The head did not have a private promise. It shared the conditions of the whole body. When we see that clearly, the pillow becomes more than comfort. It becomes a sign of how far humans moved from direct exposure toward controlled rest. That movement brought real benefits. It reduced rough contact. It made sleep more repeatable. It allowed the neck and head to receive support without asking the whole body to adjust as much. It helped turn sleep into a domestic habit, a private ritual, and a familiar return. Yet every gain in control also changes what the body pays attention to. The more sleep is arranged by objects, the easier it becomes to forget the older skills of adjustment. The body may grow less familiar with hard surfaces, changing temperatures, shared sleeping, shifting postures, and the small interruptions that once belonged to ordinary night. This is not a moral failure. It is simply what happens when a new environment becomes normal. The body learns what it repeats. If it repeats softness, softness begins to feel necessary. If it repeats a fixed height under the head, that height begins to feel like the only proper beginning of sleep. The ancient body was not better because it had less. The modern body is not worse because it has more. They are both human bodies responding to different worlds. The important lesson is humility. What feels natural to us may be partly the result of history. What feels impossible may once have been ordinary. What feels like a basic need may sometimes be a familiar solution to a deeper need. The deeper need is not the pillow itself. It is rest, safety, recovery, warmth, trust, and the ability to lower the head without fear overwhelming the body. The pillow serves that need in one particular way. Earlier humans served it through other arrangements. Ground chosen carefully, fire kept alive, bodies sleeping near one another, skins and plants used when available, and the constant practice of adapting to place. So the story does not ask us to reject modern comfort. It asks us to understand it. A pillow is not a mistake, and it is not proof that humans were incomplete before it. It is a late human answer, built from materials, settlement, habit, and care. It shows how a species that once slept close to the earth gradually made a softer boundary between the head and the world. And perhaps the quiet value of this history is that it returns gratitude to something ordinary. The pillow beneath the head is not just an object we use without thinking. It is a small result of many human changes, the making of homes, the keeping of materials, the shaping of sleep, and the long desire to make the vulnerable body feel safe enough to let go. So the long story returns to a simple image, a human head lowering into the night. At first, there is no pillow waiting. There is earth, skin, grass, ash, wood, stone, warmth, breath, and the nearness of other bodies. There is a place chosen because it is dry enough, sheltered enough, familiar enough, or safe enough. The head rests where it can. It may be lifted by an arm, softened by a hide, raised by a slope, or left close to the ground. This was not an empty or careless kind of sleep. It was sleep inside the world as it was. The body did not need the night to be perfect before it could rest. It needed the night to be survivable. Over time, human life changed the space around sleep. Shelters became more stable in many places. Floors became more defined. Materials could be stored. Bedding would remain. The head could be raised by a shaped object, then later cushioned by softer materials where conditions allowed. The pillow, in the form many people know now, stands at the far end of that long movement. It is not the beginning of human sleep. It is a late answer to an ancient vulnerability. It tells us that the body has been given a small promise. When the head lowers, something will receive it. That promise is gentle, useful, and deeply human, but it can also make us forget the older range of the body. We may forget that sleep once depended less on owning comfort and more on reading a place. We may forget that the head did not always need a personal object to enter rest. We may forget that what feels natural tonight may be something history slowly taught us to expect. This is the educational value of looking at a pillow carefully. It reminds us that ordinary objects are not ordinary at all when seen across deep time. They are small records of settlement, material skill, social care, domestic routine, and changing ideas of comfort. A pillow carries the story of cloth, filling, storage, cleanliness, repeated homes, private sleep, and the belief that the vulnerable body deserves protection. It also carries the memory of what came before it, the ground that held the whole body, the fire that made the night safer, the group that made sleep possible, and the countless temporary supports that vanished without leaving clear evidence. The truth is not that ancient sleep was pure, or that modern sleep is weak. The truth is quieter. Human beings have always learned to sleep inside the conditions they were given. When the world was rougher, the body adapted through posture, closeness, and practical materials. When the world became more settled, comfort became more specialized. The pillow is one small result of that change. It is a sign of care, but also a sign of distance from the ground where sleep first took shape. And perhaps this is why the title matters. Why did so much of human history have no pillow? Because for most of our story, sleep was not yet organized around a private, soft object. It was organized around survival, place, group, material limits, and the body's ability to adjust. The pillow arrived when the world around sleep became stable enough for softness to wait. So tonight, when the head rests on something familiar, it may be worth remembering that this softness is not timeless. It is a late comfort resting above an older human memory. And beneath that comfort, one question remains open. If the body once learned to sleep so close to the earth, what else has modern comfort quietly taught us to forget?